Hello and welcome to Miniatures Rundown. I'm Joshua, and this week I am joined by Kevin.
Hi.
Kevin is our local dwarf aficionado, or fanatic, depending on your cosplayer. He's also the leader of our local Age of Sigmar group, which is why we are dressed wearing our snazzy shirts
we're matching.
that he just ordered for us. Kevin, you're a massive dwarf fan.
Oh, yeah, that's an understatement.
And I'm assuming you have been since Warhammer Fantasy days.
Yeah, I had a dwarf army way back in Warhammer Fantasy days, yeah. It was that was my favorite army, unsurprisingly.
And now the dwarves have split a little bit. There's multiple different armies,
Right.
and one of them is Kharadron Overlords.
Right.
So what we're here today is we're going to give our review of Battletome Kharadron Overlords. That's yours.
Oh, yes. So, yes, I'm so a little bit about what I think about Kharadron Overlords. So this was the army that got me into Age of Sigmar, actually. I had no interest in Age of Sigmar because these guys, it was, first edition was kind of a dumpster fire.
Weird.
No, it was a dumpster fire.
At best,
bad.
weird. At
Yeah.
worst, dumpster fire.
But when they revealed these models, I think it was LVO. I can't remember the year specifically, but I think it was LVO when they revealed these.
14?
I think so, somewhere around there.
It was before I was into miniatures.
And when I saw steampunk sky pirate dwarves, I was like, well, I have to have these models. I was playing a lot of 40K at the time. And I was not at all interested in Age of Sigmar. Actually, I made a lot of fun of it after they blew up the old world. And, but yeah, when I saw these guys, I picked them up. I had no intention of actually playing Age of Sigmar because I thought the game was trash.
And to be fair, it kind of was.
Yeah. But I picked them up and I painted them because I love dwarves and I love the concept behind this army. And yeah, so this is what got me in Age of Sigmar. And this has been my absolute favorite army in all of Warhammer ever since.
And I also play this army. Not nearly as much as Kevin does, but I do also play them. Mitchell's not here this week because he has been nurgled.
And he doesn't like dwarves.
He also hates all Dwarden and dwarves in all of Warhammer.
It's one thing about Mitchell I just can't get past.
Yeah, which is a shame because he's, besides you, our second best dwarf cosplayer.
Right.
Well, no, Cody's probably second best now because Cody's got the even better beard.
Yeah, Cody does have a superior beard to mine.
So,
yeah.
But Cody doesn't have a bolter.
True.
A Votan bolter, sorry.
Yes.
Let's start with just you're in an ironclad and you're looking down at this tome.
As always.
What's your view?
So it's a big departure from the previous tome. The playstyle has changed quite a bit. They were always previously very glass cannon-y.
Ranged glass cannon alpha strike, high mobility,
right,
within parameters.
They were arguably the most mobile army in the game.
Yes.
Because they could be anywhere at any time during the game within a couple of restrictions.
And you couldn't tie them down?
Not easily.
Because Fly High just lets them go whee.
Right. And, unless there was a certain amount of damage or whatever. But in essence, they were pretty impossible to pin into one area. And so they got to pick the engagement. And it's still relatively the case here because it's still a very fast army. But they don't have the same pickup and be wherever they want to be, which I kind of figured when they announced a new tome that was probably going away, if not in whole, at least in part, because that just limits the design space that you can have for an army like this.
When something is that mobile, you have to be very careful about what other toys you give it.
Right. And so removing that allowed a lot more room for them to do a lot of really cool stuff with this book. The durability went up pretty significantly in the book. They still suffer from the same weaknesses of their, they are very vulnerable to mortal wounds. There's not a whole lot of defense that they have against mortal wounds. Actually, they have less than they did in the previous book. And they don't have as much defense against spells and anything like that. There's less unbinds in the book than there was in the previous, because previously you could play Barak Nar and have a ton of unbinds if you wanted it. No longer a thing in this book. We'll go over the Subfactions, of course. But the guns got a lot scarier by and large, or at least remain the same, which is good because they were pretty strong before. Mm-hmm. Or they got different, which we'll talk about when we get to the big boats.
Yeah, the big boats especially. The boats have had a real glow up.
Yes, they have. The boats are very different.
Two of them at least have.
Yeah, even the gun hauler is different in some significant ways that are important. But the balloon troops have gotten so much, they are so much better. Both versions of them are so much better. which is good because like I always liked the image of the Sky Wardens, but they were always just really bad.
The Sky Wardens were probably the worst war scroll in the old book, except maybe the Frigate. Even though the Frigate was still better because the Frigate was just a middle ground.
People still took Frigates because they were great lane blockers and they still had a lot. They still had a lot of wounds.
Yeah.
And they were transports, so they still served a purpose, whereas Sky Wardens didn't serve any purpose at all.
Yeah. So overview of the play style of this book.
Yes.
Still incredibly high mobility.
And in fact, I think it's even shorter range combat. Like it's focused on mid to short range combat.
The overall range, I think, has gone down.
Yes.
Between not being able to fly high anywhere.
Right.
And the guns in general.
Like a lot of the weapons have lost range from the previous iteration.
Being the scatter shell on all of the cannons.
All went down to 12.
To 12 inches. Instead of the 24 that it was, or the 18 that it was.
Yeah, well, it was on the great cannon. It was 24. On the heavy cannon, it was 18, and on the gun hauler, it was 12.
Now it's 12 on all of them.
Yeah, it was 12 on all of them, but they lost the random amount of shots.
Yes,
for the shrapnel shell.
So more reliable,
right?
And the shrapnel cell itself is more damaging.
It's very good. Yeah. Well, it's the same damage profile, but but consistent number of shots.
Right, consistent, which is
but yeah, I think that's one thing that's changed. Like all of the special weapons for the balloon boys went down from 24 to 15. But they're they kind of sit in like a 12-inch range, like in a little bit above as far as like their threat is concerned. There's a lot more melee in the book.
Yeah, so the melee bar has spiked.
Right.
Like through the roof comparatively.
Yeah.
They're still not a melee powerhouse army.
No.
You're not going to punch Iron Jaws and win.
Right. Melee is a tool.
They can now play into.
Right.
And almost kind of have to.
Yeah, because their range is so short on a lot of their weapons that they're going to end up in melee at some point.
You will get punched. You better be prepared for it.
Right.
So their mobility has changed as well. Fly high is gone, except as a command ability that you can only issue with an admiral, or a boat can issue to itself.
Which is really cool.
Yes. Yeah. We didn't quite get the boats being heroes thing that a lot of us asked for.
Right.
But we did get the ability of boats to issue that to themselves.
Yeah. There's 3 orders that are boat specific, and the boats can issue any of those orders to themselves, which is really cool. Like finally a sky captain gets to order his boat to do a thing. So
yeah. So I guess let's get into the more specifics.
Sure.
Obviously, the lore hasn't changed a ton.
No, it looks like it's pretty much like,
They didn't really update us on what the Dwarden are doing different in the era of the Beast.
No, it's hopefully like they'll be more involved in the storyline going forward. I always hope for that. But
yeah, they're still kind of like we're recovering from the Great Necroquake. Yeah. And oops, that kind of sucks. So the Skyports they're all the same, or rather, there's the same 6.
There's no new ones. There's new subfactions.
In general, the subfaction and code rules have been vastly, drastically simplified for the better.
Absolutely. Well, there were so many that were just not good. And
I forget who described it as a book of anti-synergy last time.
Yes.
Because there were 2 subfactions that had synergy, and that was why everyone played Zilfin.
Well, everyone played Zilfin, and occasionally people played Urbaz.
Yeah, I played Urbaz because you got more Aethergold.
Right.
Which is also gone.
That's a huge change, actually, that I should have mentioned when we were talking about the overview. The Aethergold mechanic is gone.
Yeah.
And which in essence, like after having thought about it for a long time and done some soul searching, it's okay. Once again, it's one of those things where it had tied a mechanic to the main rules, just like the garrison ability.
And then the main rules changed.
Right. And so then they changed. So yeah.
So embarking. Speaking of garrisoning, because we no longer are slave to the garrison rules.
Correct.
We have our own boat getting on and off rules.
Correct.
Finally.
Right.
During deployment, instead of setting up, you can set up a transport vessel.
Yes.
That's already on the battlefield.
Right.
So you have to deploy the boat first.
Right.
You can't deploy the boat in reserve, and you can't deploy the guys in the boat and then
to
deploy
my
the boat.
knowledge, there's no way to put a boat in reserve.
There's
not.
There's not, which is fine. You do have to play your hand a little bit.
Right.
You have to put the boat down. In addition, in the movement phase, as a friendly Skyfarer unit finishes a move wholly within 3 inches of a friendly transport, and you're 3 inches from all enemy units, you can get on the transport.
Right.
So you can move and then embark, which is good.
Yes.
So we're talking about the mobility is different now.
Mm-hmm.
Your ground troops, your boats are interestingly less mobile because they no longer have the at-will fly high all the time.
Right.
Your ground troops, though, because they can get on and off kind of at will, are much more mobile.
Right, because you can move before the boat moves and then move the boat.
Yep.
And then they can still fire from the boat, so you can bring a lot more guns into range.
Meaning your Thunderers have a threat range of 4 plus whatever the boat's range is.
Right. So, I mean, basically, they can fire kind of wherever they want.
Right.
Yeah.
So because Kharadron were kind of a scalpel army.
Oh, for sure.
They were not a hammer. And a lot of people were very worried about how they would be going into this era of the Galatian champions, because if you can't shoot the dude you need to shoot, that's what Kharadron do.
Yeah.
I think this book handles that pretty well.
I do too.
It's still a little weakness of theirs.
It is.
Which is fine.
They do have more like hammer potential in this book than they did in the previous book.
Yes. Embarked units, when you're in a transport vessel, it's kind of like the old garrison rules, but it's a little different.
It's clarified it so that it functions.
The visibility is just measured from the transport.
Right.
You are treated as a model that can fly.
Which is important because in the last book, because of how the garrison rules worked, you weren't. So you could be in a situation where the boat could fire over a wildwood, for instance, but the guys inside couldn't.
Which is, clarified. Embarked units are in cover, which is +1 to save.
It's +1 to save.
Against range attacks.
No, it gets anything.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Which is good.
Yeah.
In Age of Sigmar, that's more impactful than 40k.
Right. I mean, there's just a lot less like AP equivalent in Age of Sigmar.
And they -1 to be hit.
Yes.
So however, you can't contest an objective.
Correct. That's still a thing, which is something that I kind of hoped. I mean, it is handled a little bit in here with how boats work and objectives work, but it's something that I was hoping was not going to be a thing. But here we are.
Yeah,
so,
I'm okay with that because it means you have to
put boots on the ground.
Yeah, and the way basically the only way you can disembark from a sky vessel is if you've not already moved.
Right.
So you can't move onto a sky vessel, it moves, and then you disembark.
Unless you use the order.
Right. Yeah. There's an order for that, which gives you a supreme range.
Yeah.
But in general, you have to set up within 3 inches of the transport vessel and outside of 3 inches of all enemy units, with some caveats that we'll get to. Some very important caveats.
But yeah, I like basically the transport rules have been streamlined and no longer tied to the garrison rules, which is really good.
They now stand on their own,
Because there was some weird stuff with the garrison rules that it took a really long time for Games Workshop to even clarify how they worked.
Because also nobody knew what the hell the garrison rules were. Right. Because nobody ever plays with them.
They're rarely played. I would encourage people to play with garrisons more because I think they could add something to boards, but it's something that a lot of people just ignore because it's another mechanic.
Yeah. And then there's, and then with the last era of the beast, there's so many things going around smashing garrisons. You didn't want to play with garrisons.
That's right.
It just meant Sons of Behemoth got to kick you more.
But yeah, you didn't want to run into a gatecrasher when you had a garrison. So.
Right. Which also thankfully does not apply to this anymore.
Correct.
Because so no more gatecrashers getting bonuses against boats.
Yeah.
The code has been vastly simplified.
Yes. And for the better.
It's just there's articles, amendments, and footnotes. They spelled articles with a Y because
dwarf.
Whatever. Articles with a Y, you pick one of each. It's no longer tied to Skyport.
Right. That's great.
Thank God.
Because you can finally you can finally play with the code in a way that you couldn't before, because you took so many disadvantages for not playing within a Skyport in the previous book.
You functionally did not play outside of a Skyport.
Right.
Because none of the code articles were worth anything.
Right.
And the Skyports weren't even that good. Yeah. Except for 2 of them.
Right. There were 2 that were worth taking. So you were really pigeonholed into playing with certain parts of the code. And you didn't get to explore anything else.
Yeah. So articles honors everything. Rally on a 4 up instead of a 6.
Yeah. Potentially very strong. It's deceptively not as strong as it sounds on the outset because your units tend to be smaller and can be wiped out in one combat phase more easily because the glass cannon aspect of this army is still extant.
Yeah, even the Thunderers are not that tough.
Yeah, I mean, there are places like I could see, and we'll get into the subfactions, of course, but like Barak Zahn, for instance, with Sky Wardens, that could be very, very strong. But I think it's not quite as 4-up rally sounds incredible, and it is because I play Fire Slayers, so I know how strong a 4-up rally can be on Hearthguard Berserkers. But because your units tend to be a smaller size, you're not taking big hordes of dudes. It's not quite as strong as it sounds like.
A 4-up on one dice is better than a 6-up on one dice.
Sure.
But it's still a 50-50 shot.
Right.
Like, it's not.
So, if you have a few Arcanauts hanging out, like there are corner cases where this could be really good. Like if you have one Arcanaut remaining out of a squad and then you bring back a bunch to take an objective, like sure, that's a good play. But I don't think it's as strong in this book as it would be in other books, for instance.
And also, you're comparing it to the other 2 articles.
Right.
One of which is add 2 inches to the move characteristic of friendly sky missiles.
So good.
As we talked about, your infantry range and infantry power projection is now tied to your boats.
Right.
So boats all moving 2 inches more. And remember, fly high's not a thing.
Right.
Except, very rarely. So...
Well, the plus 2 inch, and it plays into a lot of how boats function mechanically. Like there are abilities that boats could use that extra 2 inches actually really matters a lot.
Yeah. I feel like that one's the auto take, personally.
I do too. I think that you'll take that one more often than others.
Because the third one is Settle the Grudges, which is after deployment, before first battle round, pick one enemy unit and add +1 to wound by everybody.
Now that can be really good.
Yes.
Now it depends on, of course, it depends on what you're playing against. Like if you're playing against someone who's playing a big, like Archaon is a good example of that.
Then that's amazing.
Or a big Death Star unit. Then that's a really great. Because that takes so many things from wounding on 4s to 3s and 3s to 2s.
There's a lot of wounding on 4s in this book.
There is. There's a lot of volume of dice, but there's not as the quality of dice is not quite what I would have thought it would have been going into this.
Ether shot rifles wounding on 4s feels wrong.
It does. I'm
not a fan of it. It's a gun.
Right.
It should wound on a 2.
So I'm not through with all the 4-ups to wound, and this does help to counteract that. Forget that one target you need to kill, and there are some armies where that's really, really important.
Yes, but 2 inches to your movement is always good.
Yep, that will never not be useful.
Amendments, always take it what you're owed. Arcanaut Company, at the start of your hero phase, one Arcanaut Company gets to count as 2 models instead of 1.
That could be, you could very easily combine with other stuff in this, like with the boat order to drop your guys out. You could steal an objective really easily.
Arcanauts remain your only objective holders, honestly.
For the most part, yeah.
You're going to be playing Arcanauts because there's nobody else who has bodies.
Unless your plan is to clear off objectives,
right,
and then sit on them.
Which I don't think Kharadron has the punch to do normally.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a riskier proposition to hang your whole strategy on that.
I'm going to say it's a trap. Honestly,
it could be, yeah.
It's a little early yet, but so far, but we'll get into it. Prosecute wars with all haste. Once per turn, you can make a run roll for any Kharadron Overlords, 2d6 instead of 1d6.
And that's actually really, really strong, because there are orders that characters have that allow a boat to run and shoot and charge.
Mm-hmm.
And there are boats for whom that would be very important.
Yeah, we'll get to that when we get to the frigates, right? And then once per turn in your shooting phase, you can reroll 1 hit roll of 1 for an attack made by a friendly Kharadron Overlords unit. That's the worst one.
Yeah, it's...
1 hit, like you said, this is more about volume. Even your cannons have 2 shots now.
Right.
And it's only a hit roll of 1.
Right. If it was a 1 or 2, or just reroll 1 hit roll...
If it was elite sharpshooters from Imperial Guard,
yeah,
all over that.
Right.
1 hit roll of 1.
I'm a little unimpressed.
I'm very unimpressed. Footnotes, your third one. Once per battle in your charge phase, you can attempt a charge with 1 friendly Overlord's Kharadron Overlords. You can 18-inch charge.
Right. And with a 3d6.
With a 3d6.
Which is really strong.
Which is, we'll get into.
Yeah.
You might go, oh, it's this is Kharadron Overlords. Who cares about that?
Nope, you care. You care.
There's no trading with some people. Once per battle, at the end of the enemy shooting phase, you can shoot back at somebody if they shot you.
And what's really cool about this, you don't have to shoot at the thing that shot you. You can just shoot with the unit.
Yeah, you can target. Yeah, you can just,
even if they're in melee.
Yes.
Even that's, so it's not. There are some matchups where that matters a lot less.
Right.
And there are matchups where I think that will discourage people from shooting at your Skyfarers.
If I'm playing Giants, I'm probably just gonna not throw a rock.
Right.
Because I threw a rock at the Ironclad and did 4 wounds to it. Oh god, it just unloaded on me.
Right. Well, it has to be a Skyfarer, I believe.
You are right. Sorry.
Yeah.
So Thunderers or
Arcanaut Company or even the balloons.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not bad, but not my favorite.
Yeah.
Kind of like the +1 to wound. It's very situational.
Yeah. I think that it's one of those things where a good opponent can just play around it and you don't get to use that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the final one is once per battle at the start of any phase, a Sky Vessel can receive 2 commands instead of 1.
Very good.
Very good, but it's only once per battle.
It is only once per battle. Like all the other footnotes are also only once per battle.
Yes.
But that does allow you to do some wombo combos that are really fun.
Yes. I'm more inclined to think that the 3d6 charge at the right time is going to be the better wombo combo.
I do too, yes.
But it also depends on what you're building for.
Right.
Because if you're not taking any of that melee, then you don't care.
Well, it allows you to do stuff like, some foreshadowing is you can redeploy and then drop guys out of the Sky Vessel in the same turn.
Yes. So speaking of, let's get to the Iron Sky command abilities. So these are just available to all Archnaut Admirals, which we'll get into why that makes them an auto-include functionally.
Sure.
And also Sky Vessels can issue this to themselves.
Yes.
So combat landing at the end of your movement phase, transport vessels, any units embarked in that transport vessel can immediately disembark.
Yes.
So that includes if you already embarked in that turn.
Right.
A unit that disembarks in this way cannot move in the same turn.
So they can't charge.
Right.
Which is important.
Right.
But they do get out, and there are good reasons for why you might want that.
Right. You can dump somebody onto an objective.
Some abilities only work when they're not embarked. Arcanauts are a good example of that. And so are chemists.
They can still shoot.
Yeah, they can still shoot. But like the Arcanaut's ability to get +1 to hit and the chemist's ability to add 1 to rend doesn't work inside of a boat.
Yep.
So
Fly High has changed a lot.
Yes.
Command ability at the end of your movement phase. So it's a command ability, which means you can only use it once.
Correct.
Per phase. So once per turn, basically. Yeah. The unit that receives a vessel must be a friendly Sky Vessel, and it has to be more than 3 inches from all enemy units.
So you can't do it out of combat.
No more flying high out of combat. Right. That is gone. Remove that unit from the battlefield, set up more than 9 inches from
usual teleport rules.
Blah, 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 blah. And more than 1 inch from all terrain features.
Yeah, which is important because you can't take advantage of mystical or damned or anything like that. Yeah.
So it's been heavily nerfed, and I think for the better.
I do too.
I think this book is so much fun that you're not going to miss Fly High.
I agree.
Which is saying a lot, because if you told me that last book, I would have gone.
Well, that was the feature of the book.
Yeah. That was the book, is Fly High.
Right.
And then we have Disengage. Command ability in your movement phase. Sky Vessel that hasn't moved yet. That unit and any units embarked in it can retreat and still shoot.
Correct.
Also very important.
Yeah, and mechanically, so to explain mechanically why this is so important is because when you're embarked in a Sky Vessel, the unit inside counts as making whatever move the Sky Vessel made. So
if you retreat from combat, they can't shoot either.
Correct. And that was something that in the previous garrison rules that was kind of I won't call it an oversight, it was just a casualty of being part of those, tied to those rules, is if the Sky Vessel fell back, the guys inside could still shoot.
Or fly hide.
Yeah.
I was going to say flew hide, whatever you want to call it. Back, you could still shoot.
Right. And what's cool about both Fly High and Disengage is that it's no longer tied to the wounds chart of of the boats either.
Yes.
Because before you were limited on how much whether you could disengage and or fly high, dependent upon how many wounds you had remaining.
But now your Ironclad that has 1 wound remaining is on fire, can still disengage and get one last salvo off before it explodes.
And it won't be on fire for very long.
No.
Yeah.
So we also get to our command traits. These have the usual command traits, artifacts of power.
Yep.
One nice thing about this is that for the most part, there is no more of that if you take this command. There's no more of the if you take this Skyport, you have to take this command thing as your first thing.
And that's pretty much a design space they've gone away from in 3rd edition as a whole.
Thank God, because that was annoying. A couple of them are still restricted to specific heroes, though. It'll make sense. Rather than go through all of these, are there any that are your favorite?
So my favorite, I like X Grunstock.
That's the one that makes your Grunstock Thunderer's battle line, right?
Yes, which is something that people have been wanting for so long as a way to make Grunstock battle line.
Because remember, in Age of Sigmar, you can only single reinforce a unit unless it's battle.
Correct.
So you can only double reinforce a unit of Thunderers if you take that.
Right, or if you're playing Barak Nar.
Right.
So if you don't have to play Barak Nar in order to get Thunderers as being battle line,
which with Thunderers is now really fun.
Right. The other one is Old Skydog is also really good to add another Endrinwork. And a Scholar and an Arcanaut is also great.
I just love that name.
It's a good name, and it's another footnote.
Yeah.
So another once per game ability. So you no longer have to make a difficult decision about what you want to take of your footnote.
That one depends very much on build.
Yes.
Obviously, the Thunderers one is only important if you want to double reinforce your Thunderers, or you don't want to bring Arcanaut.
Yeah. And like if you're playing, for instance, Barak Zilfin, where frigates are battle line, and then you take X Grundstock. Also, X Grundstock allows you to issue an order to a Grundstock Thunderer unit without spending a command point,
which is also really fun.
Yeah, this book is very command point thirsty.
Yes, it is. It's way more synergy than the last book, and most of that synergy eats your command points.
Yes. And there are things that play into that here that we'll get into, of course. But yeah, I think that there's a few more that the other ones are more situational. I'm maybe not a good enough player to understand how to use Cunning Fleetmaster very well.
Which one's that again? I don't even remember that one.
At the end of the enemy movement phase, you can move a boat that's further than 12 inches away. Make a normal move with it.
You can within 12 inches of the general and more than 12 inches away.
Yeah.
So I think the idea there is that your general is embarked on that boat and is a long-range mobile command general. Unfortunately, I don't think that synergizes with anything else your general wants to do.
There may be something really cool with that. I just don't know. I'm just not smart enough to know what it is.
Grudge Bearer, which doubles the damage only from your general, I think is not great because
it's only against one specific hero.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
And then Stormcaller, which is you can reroll any of the dice rolled with a friendly etheric navigator.
That's very good, actually.
It is.
But it requires you to have a navigator to make that useful.
Artifacts of Power, same thing. My favorite is Amulet of Destiny. I mean, Master Right Armor. It's back, baby.
Everyone gets a 5-up ward again.
No, it's only your Arcanaut Admiral.
That's right. You can only take on the Admiral.
And you can only take it once.
Right.
Which is,
it's okay. I wouldn't use my artifact slot on it.
No.
Yeah.
Your Admiral is such a key part of your army, though.
And there's no more bodyguard rule for him. He used to have the bodyguard that would, protect the captain. Like that doesn't exist anymore.
And Galatian champions and veterans does not work if you are embarked, if I recall.
It does.
It does?
Yeah, because it's measured. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Galatian champion. So if he's on board, like if you're playing Zilfin, for instance, and he's on board a frigate, he cannot be shot because he's within 1 inch of a battle line, being within 1 inch of himself.
So two of these are going to be pretty familiar.
Yes.
One of them is the grenade that removes a ward on a 2-up.
Yep, the Celestium Burst Grenade is...
Remember that was just an ability on his Warscroll that you had to pick at the start of the game?
Right.
Now it's just an artifact that anyone can take.
Yep. It is so good. Like, there are matchups where it won't matter.
Right.
But there are matchups where it matters a lot.
Archaon not getting a ward is about the worst thing that can happen to Archaon.
Yeah.
I have often joked about pull my Ironclad up alongside the God of Death. I want a broadside Nagash.
Right.
Suddenly, that is a good idea.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm going to throw this. All right, now go. And then you just unload on the guy.
Or there's some models that, like, for instance, do you want to delete Gotrek?
Yeah. Gotrek.
Because Gotrek is not a Galatian champion.
Gotrek hates this one weird trick.
Yeah. He's not a Galatian champion, so he can be shot at. He does benefit from Lookout, sir, but that's only so much protection.
I don't give a crap.
Yeah, if you're going to delete a quarter of your opponent's army, that's the way to do it. Also, like, go into more order stuff. Well, it's good against all the death factions.
Yes, everybody. There's we're entering the realm of Godhammer.
Right.
There are so many important things that have ward saves, and this just says no.
Right. Hearthguard Berserkers.
Which, that's a real... It's not quite an auto take.
No, but it is really good. Like, it's a great second artifact.
I'm going to say that Kharadron Overlords are an army that really loves that 2 artifact battalion.
I do. Yep.
Because that one's real good.
Yep. I think you might always want that in your back pocket.
Yeah, because when it matters, it's going to matter.
Right.
And then the Blazebeard and Sons Drac Butter Magbullas is the grappling a monster thing.
Yeah, and there's no, if I recall correctly, there's no dice roll for that.
Nope.
It just happens.
No, there is. It's on 2-up.
Oh, it's a 2-up. Okay, so it's pretty reliable. But it is like there are some, like, I'm gonna bring Marathi back into this.
She hates that.
Oh yeah, being able to only roll 1 dice for a charge. No.
Yeah, go ahead and retreat and charge. Oh, I don't care anymore.
That makes a 3-inch charge failable
very easily
on a 1 in 3 chance.
Yeah. And even then, a 6-inch charge is suddenly not very scary.
Yeah. So, like, I'm not like, once again, we've talked about this with the Regiments of Renown. Like, there's not as many monsters out there in the meta as there are presently. So that is a useless artifact in some matchups.
But the monsters that are there usually want to charge.
Yeah. Almost exclusively. There's not very many like
Sons of Behemoth hate that.
Oh yeah, Sons of Behemoth. Like the only monster I can think of off the top of my head that really doesn't give much of a care about that is Lord of Change.
Maybe the turtle.
Even the turtle really likes to charge. It's got really good melee stats.
Yeah,
so.
You're right. Yeah, I guess the Lord of the Change is the only one who's going to be like, suckers.
Yeah,
mortal wounds.
Yeah, or I guess maybe even Thankful doesn't care.
No, Thankful, yeah,
because he's usually taking the warp fire.
In the way people build him,
yeah.
In this matchup, because you're usually building the warp fire throwers, Thankful hates Kharadron to begin with.
Yes,
because Thankful doesn't benefit from. Yeah, as a Thankful player, I don't want to go into Kharadron.
Right,
because he's gonna die turn 1.
Right,
and my warp fire throwers are gonna be useless.
Right.
I did 4 mortal wounds to a boat.
Yay! So yeah.
All of these, there are no bad artifacts. I think
there's
the only,
not.
there are no bad artifacts.
I think the worst one is the 5-up ward.
Yes, which is, wow.
Yeah.
Spell in a bottle's back.
It is.
And better than ever.
It is. It is. You can no longer take faction-less spells, which is a good change.
As it should have been.
Right. But now the spell is free. So... but the bearer can never control the spell.
Yep, so there's double good with that because you set this thing loose and then just hope it doesn't eat you.
Right. So one of the things that I'm thinking about is, of course, everyone's thinking Purple Sun.
Everyone's thinking Purple Sun because Purple Sun and a lot of the endless spells are balanced by being a little bit too expensive.
Right. And Purple Sun is one, like getting an extra rend out there, real good. The other one that I think is really good is a Horrorghast.
Yeah, Horrorghast is kind of in the meta right now for that reason.
Yeah. The nice thing about the Horrorghast is you can throw it out in your own hero phase, toot it up there, do a bunch of damage, and force a bunch of morale checks. And then on the return, if you don't get the following turn, you can. It's only a 5 to cast, so it's pretty easy to dispel.
Yeah, and you do have some decent dispel options in this book. That's a minimal return oopsie.
Right.
Probability on the Horrorghast.
Right. If the Horrorghast comes back at you, it can hurt, but it's not as bad as a Purple Sun coming back at you.
Kharadrons are also not particularly weak to morale.
No. Your
Arcanauts are.
Arcanauts are bravery 6, but everything else is 7.
And your boats don't care.
Yeah, boats don't care at all about morale. Yeah.
It's also worth noting that the spell in the bottle, it's still only Aetherchemist.
Yes.
And it's no longer as scary because there's no longer the Varric Zilfin fly high.
Correct. There's no hero phase fly high.
Hero phase, move, drop, mousetrap.
So there's more setup involved with this. The Navigator can help out with that a little bit. But overall, it's not just a turn 1 Alpha Strike bomb that it used to be with Zilfin.
Yeah. I like it more now. It's more of a utility tool. I no longer hate it. Phosphorite Gauntlets, on the other hand.
I love the Phosphorite.
I hate these things. It's the same thing as it was last.
Yep, it's exactly the same.
Endrinmaster only. So you can't. I think last time it was only dirigible suit Endrinmaster.
It was the dirigible suit.
Now it's either Endrinmaster,
which is really cool because now you can put it on the Endrinmaster that's sitting on a boat.
And that guy hits hard with that hammer.
Yes,
he will.
He's really good.
Is Mr. Endrinmaster going to have to slap a Skaven? Yeah, because.
But yeah,
you roll a dice on a 2-up immortal. You roll again on a 2-up, it's immortal. You keep going until you roll a 1.
Right.
I've seen this guy put out 8 of these. I hate it.
It's one of those artifacts that I think, once again, I don't think it's your primary choice for an artifact. I think it's something that exists in your back that you can put in your back pocket.
I believe it was also a different phase last time, right? Or was it?
It was a shooting phase.
It was your shooting phase. Yeah. Okay, that's not changed.
Yeah.
So it's only in your shooting phase, which means it is only on your turn.
Right.
So was it always 6 inches though?
I think it was 8 before.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'd have to look, but I believe it was. I think it was a longer range before.
You get within 6 inches. You got to be doing during your shooting phase. You drop mortals on somebody. I mean, there's a potential that you roll a 1.
Usually, it's really good against low wound count characters. It's really good for assassinating other Galatian champions.
Yes, because this does not respect Galatian champions.
Nope.
There's nothing that says you can't select them.
It's not a ranged weapon, so it doesn't care about that. It's really good at that. It's really good at it occasionally will just go crazy and kill something big, but you can't ask
That's
it
not
to
what
do.
you use it for, especially it says because you don't want to put your Endrinmaster in danger close.
Right. But you can use it to soften up a big target. That's a great use for it because it happens during your shooting phase. You can just choose and then depending on what it does, you can say, I'm going to shoot something else.
What this really is the anti-Galatian champion.
I agree.
Because those are often foot heroes who want to be in combat. This says, screw that foot hero.
Yeah. I mean, once again, this is something that... I'll go back to an army. I know Fire Slayers hate this.
Fire Slayers hate this book.
They really do. Actually, this book really is... I don't know what to do against it when I'm playing my Fire Slayers.
Ally them in?
I got some ideas.
Oh no! Oh no! I'm not going to be here for the next few Tuesdays. Just let me know.
But yeah, it's a really good artifact.
And then the last one is Etheric Navigator only, Voidstone Orb, auto unbind.
Yep, it's one auto unbind.
Not a dispel, just an unbind.
Which is important because in the last book it was also a dispel.
Yes. That is gone.
Right.
The Great Endrinworks. So these are the enhancements. There's 6 for your ironclads, 4 for your frigates, and 3 for your gun haulers.
Right.
Must we be here all night? Any standouts to you?
So for the frigate, I think that the omniscope is great, +2 to movement.
Yeah, they all have
access to the omniscope.
No, the gun hauler does not.
Yeah, it's already really fast. It doesn't need it.
Yeah, it doesn't need it.
But the omniscope, if you combine that with the Articyls that gives +2 inches to movement, suddenly a frigate's moving 16 inches, which is once you talk about frigates, that's really good.
we're really teasing those frigates.
But yeah, for the ironclad, the battle ram is incredibly good.
Yeah,
and that's where you play into the 3d6 charge footnote, because it rolls a dice for each inch of charging. That you
and on a
roll
4-up immortal.
A 4-up immortal. So you get the Stonehorn charge on an ironclad on 3d6. So you get the Kragnos Stonehorn charge on your boat.
Yeah. The last word remains good.
Yep, it's just as it was before, and
it's Overwatch. Great.
It's an extra Overwatch because you get to do it in addition to if you choose to unleash hell with the boat.
Yes,
which it was that before as well.
Negating the first wound each phase. That can be very annoying on big.
I think if you build that into a healing build for the ironclad, that might be worth it.
Yeah,
but I don't. It's not my first pick.
Prudency shoots are available on the 2 or bigger boats.
Yep,
they're okay now.
Yeah, well, the big thing is it lets you disembark within 3 inches.
Yes. Well, it lets you disembark within 3 inches if the unit's destroyed.
Right. Yeah.
So you can't. It doesn't let you disembark within 3 inches all the time.
Right.
Although frigates can kind of already do that, so they don't really care.
Yeah.
Those are the standouts. The gun hauler doesn't really have any standout ones.
No, the spar torpedo is probably the best.
Yeah.
I actually do like the Coalbeard's collapsible compartments. Because there are small units that you might want to actually carry inside of a boat, inside of that.
Well, especially now that the balloon boys have changed how they no longer have hitch.
They no longer hitch.
It used to be that you didn't put your balloons in the boat; they just hitched a ride. That's gone. You have to put your balloons in the boat now,
and they take up space just like everybody else. Because in the very first Battletome, they could ride in the boat without taking up any space. And now they take up space just like everybody else, and which is great. It's just everyone follows the same rules.
Yes,
it's nice.
None of that crap with that.
Yeah.
And 6 friendly Skyfire models is either a unit of 5 Thunderers and a hero.
Yep. Or a reinforced balloon squad. And these things move really, like the gun haulers can move really fast.
Yes.
So you can actually get a pretty good melee punch in with
that scalpel thing. Even their melee is scalpel based,
right?
Which I like. So now let's get to the Skyports.
Yes,
one of my favorite things that changed about this book, because
I agree.
That was one of the most unfun things about the previous book was the way the Skyports worked.
Yeah,
it was just like I didn't pick the one that felt cool.
Right,
I picked the one that felt like it worked as a concept.
Right.
And that is gone. Nowadays it's like every other subfaction. You pick one, you get a thing.
Yep.
Barak Nar is at the start of your hero phase. Every hero on a 4-up, you get a command point.
Yep. Really good.
That one's really good. The problem is it is comparing with, I'm going to go right to Barak Mornar.
Yep.
Which is every time an enemy model issues a command within 12 inch of any of your units on a 5-up, they don't get that command ability.
And it's spent.
Holy crap. That's my favorite one. By far. The pirates are now the pirates.
That's such a good subfaction ability. It's so good.
That is going to irritate so many strategies. Something is going to be useless against.
Sure.
Lumineth shooting, doesn't care.
Right.
Whatever.
But
if you get within 12 inches, even Lumineth shooting cares.
Well, a lot of things defensively depend on all-out defense to really keep themselves safe. And
this synergizes with, like you said, the guns being a shorter range.
Right.
Because if you can get within 12 inches with Barak Mornar,
the chance to, and it makes you, and it has a little bit of a psychological effect too, or it makes your opponent think of is this the best place to spend?
There's a 1 in 3 chance that this command ability is just not going to go off,
and I will lose my command point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I get nothing for it.
Right.
And you can't. That's the nice thing is that you the command ability still counts as having been used.
Correct. So you can't use it anywhere else.
That's huge.
Yep.
That is my favorite one.
And actually, it's mine too.
And it also makes Mornar cool.
Yeah.
They were always like, the idea behind Mornar is they're the pirates.
Right.
All Kharadron are pirates. They're all terrible, ultra-capitalist, evil jerk dwarfs. But among that, Mornar is the most.
Pretty much the worst. Yeah. You don't want to. They're not your friends. They don't want to be your friends, and they'll take everything from you if you turn your back. But yeah, and the cool thing about it is it's not like an aura from one character.
It's just
not
all your units.
Yeah, because previously it was -1 bravery within 3 inches. I mean, it was okay, but like nothing I wanted to build.
Previous Kharadron didn't want to be within 3 inches.
Right. It was like there's not where you wanted to be anyway. So
nowadays it's like, the orcs could use mighty destroyers and just not go off.
Right. And 12 inches is an extremely generous range.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that every time an enemy model issues a command.
Correct. So the opponent can play around it.
Yes.
So a character that's outside 12 inches of that can issue it to a unit that's within 12 inches.
And you can't do much about it.
And there's nothing but. That means, generally speaking, every hero is only limited to issuing one command.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, like in a lot of heroes, especially in the Galatian Champions era, want to be close to all their units. So it does play into how the current season goes anyway. And like if you can sneak a Mornar, like if you once again like a gun hauler, if you could zip a gun hauler back to like encompass a lot of their heroes.
You put one sacrificial gun hauler in the middle of their army before the first turn, and that thing's gonna die, but your plan is to completely disrupt their auras and synergies. Turn 1 and hope that all you just hope is that you roll a couple fives.
Or there's so many like. For instance, a good example of this is both Daughters of Cain and Fyreslayers have access to 4-up rallies. Mm-hmm. Or even Beasts of Chaos have access to 5-up rallies. Now, just a dice roll to cancel out a rally, big deal.
And sometimes this won't go off because it's a 5-up.
It's a 5-up. It's a 1 in 3 chance. However, it's definitely if it works, it works.
It's also not limited number of times it goes off. It's just always. So your opponent could issue all-out attack. It doesn't go off. And then they issue all defense and it doesn't go off.
Right.
Like this has an opportunity of phosphor vomiting.
And there's all kinds of like Warscroll command abilities too. And
there's so many things.
Right.
Yeah. My personal favorite makes me want to play Barrack Mornar. It's one of 2 reasons I want to play Barrack Mornar. We'll go into the other one when we get into the Warscrolls. Okay. But back to the other ones that are less. Sorry, we unburied the lead there.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because Barrack Zilfin is pick 1 additional great engine work.
Yeah, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
Especially and it makes Frigate's battle line.
Yes.
So that's actually really important.
Yep.
Additional engine work, giving a free bar torpedo, free battle ram,
mm-hmm.
like it's all really good.
Because Endrinworks are like mount traits, you get 1.
Yep.
Barrack Zon is add 1 to hit and wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by friendly Skyfarers that made a charge move in the same turn.
So good.
If you're playing melee heavy, this is better than even Mornar.
Absolutely, yes.
Because add 1 to hit and wound?
Yes. Also, it makes Sky Wardens battle line, which is the only way to double reinforce Wardens.
Yeah, so if you want a unit of 9 Wardens, that's how you do it. Because the Endrin Master only makes Endrin Riggers battle line. He no longer makes all Balloon Boys battle line.
Correct.
So that's also a good one, and we'll get more into the melee.
Yep.
Barrack Urbaz, pick 1 additional article.
Very good.
Can't pick one your article already has.
Yep. So you get to pick like the 2d6 run, or the you get to pick the reroll one roll of a hit roll of 1, which can be that's where you might pick that. Something
where you've got an extra one.
Yeah, or that's the doubling up the model count for our Arcanaut company. I mean, there's a lot of utility there.
None of these are bad.
Nope.
All of them are good and playable.
You could build a list around any of these subfactions. It also makes Gunhaulers battle line.
Yes. And then Barrack Thring, City of the Ancestors, out in the gods, just in case.
Yep.
Allied Dwarden Priests, of which there are 2.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, so because there's 2 in Fyreslayers and 1 Rune Ward.
Yeah.
Know the following prayer in addition to any others they know. Rune of Ancestral Guidance goes off on a 3. Has a range of 16 inches. If answers, you pick 1 Arcanaut or Thunderers unit, wholly within range, until the start of your next hero phase on modified hit rolls of 6 for attacks with missile weapons, also cause a number of mortal wounds equal to the damage characteristic.
Yep.
And in the attack sequence in, so it's not in addition.
Right.
It just turns your damage into mortals.
Right.
That one requires probably the most situational build besides Barrackzon, the melee.
It is more setup, potentially devastating.
Yeah.
It does require a 3-up to go off, and it's just 3-ups are just notorious for failing at just the right time. It requires you to be wholly within 16 of a priest that can't be on board a boat.
That's the big problem, is that,
yeah.
And also all 3 of those priests are slow.
Yep. The only, and you can't give them the enhancement for Tunnel Master to teleport up the board in the movement phase.
You can't give, because they're allied, you can't give them Master Priest either.
Nope.
So they can't, there's no re-rolling that roll.
Right.
It's dicey.
It is. I think a double reinforced unit of Thunderers, getting that blessing is extremely strong.
That is now a hammer.
Yeah.
That's a Death Star unit there.
Right.
If you do that, that's a Death Star.
Because Thunderers get a lot more attacks now.
And the nice thing is that you can have the prayer go off and then fly that Thunderer unit somewhere else.
Correct.
So it only has to go off at the beginning.
Right.
It doesn't have to go off. You don't have to stay in range.
And 16 inches is a generous range for Wholly Within.
It is.
But once again, it does just require more setup, and also you are more vulnerable to that. Because you're probably not gonna take more than one allied priest because they're kind of pricey.
120 points for the Rune Lord is the cheapest.
Yeah, and it's 125 for plus 4.
No, a Rune Lord might be 100 now. Anyway, it's still expensive.
It's still expensive. In this book, you are pretty strapped for points,
and those priests aren't doing anything else.
Correct. You could give them heal or curse. So, I mean, heal might not be bad with boats.
This is true.
But you have so many ways to heal your boats now that I don't think that's...
And I guess the play here would be to have your Rune Lord or your Rune Priest send it off and then just march up the board threatening to curse your opponents.
Right. And curse is so short range that it's hard to synergize that with how the rest of your army works. If the priest could ride a boat, different story altogether.
If the priest could ride a boat, we would be in a very different universe.
But I think you could play... I can envision a Thring list that doesn't play with a whole lot of boats, but plays with a lot of infantry.
And I think that's the point, is that this is more about you having a slow marching infantry wall.
Right.
So you have your Thunderers and you have your Arcanaut, and they're just walking up.
And the boats are more support pieces. Yeah.
I don't know if there's a lot of play in that.
No, I'm not sure either. I'm interested to actually try it and see how it works.
Interesting side note, because it's just any allied Dwarden priest. The Kharadron, I don't know where we put the
Regiment of Renown.
The Regiment of Renown, which you can bring with Kharadron. That priest does know that spell.
Yep.
That might be the best case for bringing that regiment.
Yeah.
Because now you have a unit of melee capable-ish, or at least shielded, durable folks.
Right.
Which is something the Kharadron doesn't have. They don't have durable, and they especially don't have durable versus mortal wounds.
Correct.
And that unit sits on one objective while that priest is
throwing out that prayer.
Out that prayer.
Yep. I could see it. I think it's worth trying at the very least. Is it ultra competitive? Probably not.
Would it be funny if it goes off and you absolutely annihilate something off the board with a bunch of mortal wounds?
Yep.
Yes. You get to do it once, and then your opponent will murder that priest every time he sees it.
Absolutely. Yep.
So overall, I think we're both in the same boat here. Barrack Mornar is my favorite, but Barrackzon is a close second.
I've already heard buzz about a lot of people planning out certain Barrackzon Alpha Strike lists that can...
I think there are a lot of Kharadron players who are embracing their inner dwarf, which is to say they want to smack things.
Yeah, absolutely. And with good reason.
All right. So now let's go to the Warscrolls.
Yep.
All the Path to Glory stuff we're not going to... I don't play Path to Glory, so I don't know a darn thing about it.
And it is a more limited play space.
So there are a couple... so grand strategies.
Oh, okay, yeah. So these are actually...
I said Warscrolls. We're going to do the grand strategies.
Yep.
Because I think these are actually worth talking about.
Yep,
in a way that many books have just, you could just kind of flip through this section.
Right.
These are actually good.
These are good.
When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if there are one or more friendly sky vessels on the battlefield and there are no enemy behemoths that can fly.
Sometimes this is just an auto, I get 3 points.
Yeah, sometimes it's hope you killed my sky vessel.
Yeah.
Another time it's, oh god, it's Archaon.
Yeah.
So... But the nice thing is you get to pick this. I mean, it's on your army roster, so...
Yeah. I mean, I feel like in, some armies, they don't have flying behemoths. And...
Well, it's 3 points for me.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you don't get tabled, And
then other armies, it's, oh, that's Archaon. Oh.
I mean, and to be fair, even against, armies like that, we kind of have a lot of good tools to deal with big models like that.
Get close, hit him with a grenade, and pray.
Right.
And honor the ancestors just in case. Defend the flagship. You pick this grand strategy only if the model picked to be your general is an Arcanite Admiral, which he probably will be.
I'm almost certain that, yeah.
When the battle ends, if you complete this grand strategy, if the general has not been slain and his flagship, which we'll get to, is not destroyed. Which is kind of the same thing, except you don't have to kill all the other behemoths.
Right.
Prospector Fleet. After deployment, your opponent must pick one terrain feature to hold a bounty of mineral wealth. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if you control that terrain feature.
That's not bad.
That's not bad. You force your opponent to pick one, and you're so mobile that you can then force them to play around a terrain feature.
Right.
The problem is they get to pick it.
They do get to pick it, and that can vary from like venue to venue. Like where you play at, and what terrain they play with there. So that would be one where if you're familiar with the place where you're playing, that could be a really good one to choose. Some places play with more, some places play with less terrain. Like, if your opponent picks a terrain feature that's like this big, it's really hard to defend.
Well, they just won't pick that one.
Right.
They're going to pick the little well over here, and then they're going to put one guy on it. And
right.
And then the last one, guided by the code, you have to complete 4 battle tactics, at least 4. And every battle tactic you completed this battle was from the decrees of the code list below.
This is the worst one by far.
The worst one, because keep in mind, if you go 5 rounds, that means you need to either only complete 4 of your battle tactics or complete 5 from this list.
Right.
And some of these battle tactics are not great.
Yeah. There are some that are really good, and there are a couple that are just duds.
One of them is you complete this battle tactic if you destroy an enemy unit with a bombing run.
I mean, situational, but if the opportunity we'll talk about bombing runs when we get to the Warscrolls, of course, but if there's something left on one wound,
free battle tactic.
Yeah.
Mobilize the fleet. Can't pick it in the first round. 3 friendly units on the battlefield that are not embarked. If they're all embarked, again, you can't pick it first round.
Right.
But it might be worth setting up your army in a way that you can do that round too.
Well, and it's just units, so that includes characters too. So a couple characters in an infantry unit getting back into a boat, battle tactic achieved.
Yep. And if you start your guys in the boat, what you can do is turn 1, move them, disembark them.
Yep.
Shoot. And then get back on the boat.
Yeah, and if you get a double turn going into the next turn, then back in the boat, go up, free battle tactic.
Boots on the ground, 3 friendly units embarked.
Just the inverse.
Complete this battle tactic if they're not embarked, and wholly within enemy territory.
Which is also really important, and that's better on some missions than others.
Yes.
Some missions, the enemy territory is very generous, some it's very restricted.
Yep. Opening salvo, only in the first battle round,
yes.
Which I think is the only one I know of that does this.
I believe so.
Complete this battle tactic if an enemy unit is destroyed in the shooting phase.
It's a really good battle tactic.
That's a very easy one. It's something you probably want to do.
Yeah. If you, I'm not going to say if you don't kill something on the first battle round with, then you're not going to do very well, but it's probably going to happen.
Mission dependent.
Yeah.
Blasting the smithereens, pick an objective that has enemy units within 12 inches. If there are, do you see those enemy units over there? Yes, sir. I don't want to. Yes, sir.
Yep.
You get a point.
That's a really good one too. I feel
probably something you want to do anyway.
Depending, if someone just is camping one little guy out on an objective just to keep it safe.
You're flying high, which the Sky Vessel can do itself.
Right.
And you shoot that guy off of it, and
battle tactic achieved. Yep. And
then finally, you can pick this tactic only if you control fewer objectives than your opponent. You complete the tactic if you control more objectives.
Sometimes occasionally that aligns with the goal of whatever you're especially if you're going second and your opponent jumps on objectives early, then if you are confident you can take them back, that's a good one to take.
None of these are terrible.
Yeah. I had previously said that I think a couple were stinkers, but now we read through them. There's a situation for any of them.
None of them are stinkers.
Yeah.
The 2 battalions, we have an attack squadron, which is 2 to 3 frigates and 2 to 3 Arcanite companies.
Meh.
It's got expert, so it can get all out attack or defense. And it's also got swift, so they can get at the double or forward to victory.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's worth the drops, though. That's
escort wing is 2 Grunstocks, 1 unit of Thunderers, optionally 3 balloon boys, an ironclad, another frigate. It just gets slayers. Again, none of these are the battalions are the
they're not great. Yeah.
All right, the Warscrolls.
Yep.
We'll go over the ones that are now. Luckily, the one downside of this book is that there are very few of them.
Yes.
But let's start with the glow up to end all glow ups. Brock Grungni.
Oh man, Brock got so much better.
First off, the previous 2 books, nobody ever played Brock.
No, he was bad.
He was bad. Barak Nar was bad, and Barak Nar is still not my favorite.
No, but this is an incentive to play Barak Nar.
He's so good that you might play Barak Nar now.
Right.
He's one of those guys.
Right.
Which, oh no. 12-inch move, 3-up save, 8 bravery, 8 wounds. Still has the amazing hat.
He can, and what's important is he embarks on vessels now,
which he couldn't do.
Right.
Every time he fights, on a 2-up, enemy gets mortal wounds at the end of it
from his mustache guns. Yep.
Yeah. That's the mustache-mounted aether blasters. First rule of Grungni, if he charged, yes. So he has to charge.
Right.
Add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Barrack Nar Skyfarer units.
So that applies both to himself. It's also important to note that that's not a command ability. It just happens.
It's not. It just happens.
Yeah.
That's almost better than the Barrack Zon +1 to hit and wound.
And yeah, I mean, you are rolling more dice, and that's always good in this game.
Hitting and wounding is great, but +1 attack on multiple different units.
And we'll see when we get to both units of balloon troops, like how this can be so strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then finally, command the fleet. Command ability at the start of you pick 3 sky vessels, more than 3 inches of enemy units. You can reroll run rolls, and they can run and shoot or charge.
Right. And so an important restriction to point out, because both the Admiral and Brock have a similar ability, is that if the vessel runs, the guys inside still can't shoot due to this.
Right.
So it's good on empty boats, but you're losing out on full boats when you do this.
For himself, his Ethermatic Saw is 4 attacks, 3s and 3s, Nick 2d3.
Yep.
Pistol is 3s and 3s, 1, 2.
Yep. 6 shots on Grungnitsen's.
The Magnus Charter.
The Magnus Charter. His boast is basically it's a cannon.
1 attack, 3s and 2s, 2 rend, D3 plus 3 damage.
Yes.
We've lost the D6.
Right.
That's a design space they're playing in both 40K and Age
of Sigmar.
Yes,
they're trying to reduce the variability of damage
because they realize nobody likes D6s.
Right.
Fix my Black Dragon, please. Thank you. Yeah. The Archanaut Admiral is a mini Brock. He can't,
more or less, yeah.
He can't fly. He's got 2 less wounds.
Still a 3-up save. Good melee profile.
3 attacks, 3s and 2s, 2 rend, flat 3.
That's very good.
So he's actually 1 less attack, but more consistent damage than Brock.
Right. And he's also got his pistol got a +1 is 2 damage now rather than 1.
Yeah, 3 attacks, 3s and 3s, 1 rend, 2 damage.
Yep.
Not great.
No, it got +1 to wound. It was 3s and 4s.
Yes.
It was 2 damage before, but it went up to 3s and 3s, which is nice.
But you're more picking this guy for either his melee and
his
absolutely.
Abilities. Like all the damage is like a nice bonus to what he brings to the table.
So the big thing about him is he gets to pick a flagship.
Yes.
An Ironclad or a frigate. And he can issue a command to that flagship once per turn without a command point being spent.
Huge.
Massive.
Yeah.
Brock doesn't get to pick a flagship.
Nope.
That's the thing. Brock is real good, but the Admiral's so darn good that I almost don't think... Brock is not an auto-take.
No, Brock is not an auto-take. You could build a list around Brock for sure.
Yes.
But I think the Admiral, he's going to be in every list.
He's now playable.
Yeah.
The Admiral, and also there's the things that can only be issued by the Admiral.
Right.
He can only hold the best... no, not the best. He holds the worst artifact.
Exclusive artifact, yeah.
Which is, I mean... Yeah. Gravebreaker rounds... At the
so good.
Start of the phase, shooting phase, can't pick a sky vessel, but you can just make a Thunderer or a Balloon Boy or a... It's going to be a Thunderer.
Yeah.
You increase their rend by 1.
And what's really cool about this is that it can be used while embarked.
Yes.
Which, like, the Chemist has a similar effect, cannot be used while embarked.
Right.
So there's some really cool things you can do with that.
Yeah. You can also add 1 to the attacks characteristics of a unit's missile weapons if it's a sky vessel remained stationary and is more than 3 inches.
So on an Ironclad, that's pretty amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is the one big point against the volley cannon.
Right. And the volley cannon definitely loses out on that. But that's where one of the footnotes where you can issue an order twice, because then you can do all out attack and that order to get an extra
+1 to hit and +1 attack.
Yeah.
Best of both worlds.
Right.
And then command the skies. It's the same thing. Rerun.
Right.
Reroll, run, and charge. So the Admiral is nearly auto-take.
I would say he's auto-take. I'm willing to die on that rock there.
Unless you are taking Brock.
Sure.
Or maybe unless you're taking our next folk here.
Yeah.
Drekkie Flint, who is the named awesome character from Black Library.
Yep.
Same stats as an Admiral, exactly. Except he has a much better pistol.
Better pistol, yeah.
It's the same hit and wound profile, but it's 2d6 attacks.
Yes. And it's that pistol, like, 2d6, you're going to average about 7 shots.
Very rarely are you going to roll lower than the 3 of the Admiral.
Right.
And very often are you going to spike 10 shots and just
but
the hammer on somebody.
But the thing is, like, he's only 5 points more than an admiral, and he has the and like the potential to spike with that gun is just like, it's really good. Like, it's just a really good gun.
He also gets to pick a flagship, but it has to be a frigate.
Yes.
He's Barrack Mornar, by the way.
Yes.
Which, unlike Barrack Anar, which is not a great subfaction.
Yeah.
Mornar's a great subfaction.
Right.
He only can pick a frigate, and the frigate gets +1 to its melee weapon.
Plus one damage to its boarding weapons,
which is
the reason why is because one of his crew members is an ogre.
Yes.
And that's why it's
punch.
So it's cute. Like,
given the frigate's status as an assault boat that wants to be in combat,
I mean, it's not bad.
It's not bad.
It's not unwelcome, but it's definitely like, it's interesting.
I love his ability, Let Me Drive.
Yes. Reroll running charges.
Yep. While he's embarked on it.
Right.
Not a command ability. Move up, drive me closer. I want to hit them with my skull.
Right.
Grunnison's axe. Auxiliary Skyhook. If he fights a monster after on a 2-up, if the monster's still alive, it gets 3 mortal wounds.
It's a nice little spicy bonus.
Not D3, just 3.
Yeah.
And then light fingered, he has a chance.
This is so good.
Yeah, if he's within 1 inch of an enemy hero at the start of the combat phase.
This is big. Yeah.
On a 3-up, the enemy hero no longer has an artifact of power if it has one. That is absolutely busted amazing sometimes.
Depending on like what you're going up against, like there are armies out there that they revolve around this hero having this one artifact. And
we talked about Galatian Champions. This anti-synergizes with that because, you have that, if I've got my Claw Lord,
right,
who charged Drekki with his like 20 Storm Vermin,
right,
so you couldn't shoot him. And he's got that really awesome armor that gives him a yoink.
That is now mine. Thank you.
Yep. Now Drekki doesn't benefit from it.
No, he does not get to use the artifact.
Thank God, because that would be, there's some broken shit with that.
Yeah.
But you can do things like steal someone's arcane tome.
Yep.
You could steal an admiral's 5-up ward.
Yep. This armor is mine now.
And then just hit him with something.
Right. There's like, a lot of armies have access to artifacts that allow fights first or strike last or stuff like that. And that all because this happens at the start of the combat phase, that can just cancel out a bunch of and big monster heroes, like we're talking about Sons of Behemoth, for example, have a lot of really strong artifacts available to them. This is a good way to just take that away.
And it works on those guys just as well as it does on little guys. Right. Pickpocket a giant. Sure.
Hey, they're not very bright.
No, fair enough. It's just kind of like flying into their pockets and picking something out.
So he can't use it while embarked. That is an important part of it.
Yes. Drekki's really good. The problem is that
he doesn't have the same commands as the Admiral.
No, and the Admiral's also really good.
So you probably take Drekki in addition to an Admiral,
which is a lot of points.
It is. Because Admiral's 125, Drekki's 130. So you're investing quite a bit of points, and Drekki is not a Galatian champion.
Nope.
So like Drekki is definitely in addition to the rest of your army. He is not leading your army.
He's not going to replace your Admiral.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because he's not an Admiral.
He's a captain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Endrinmaster and dirigible suit has not changed a ton.
Not a whole lot. Both Endrinmasters lost the Gaze of Grungni range attack.
Yep.
Which I really like that little range attack, but
his role has changed.
Yes, it has, absolutely.
Previously, he was kind of a combat shooting hero.
Yep.
Your best one, really. Nowadays, he is very specifically meant to synergize with your healing Endrinriggers.
Right.
And that's kind of what he does.
I agree. He still has great weapons.
He's got an Aether Cannon on there.
But you used to have lots of ways to boost his durability, which you don't have access to anymore.
Nope.
So,
add 1 to field repair rolls.
Which is, when we get to the Endrinriggers, we'll see why that's excellent.
He can just flat heal 3, which can combine with the Endrinriggers.
Right.
If you have an Ironclad that can survive the hit, you can make your opponent's life really miserable.
Right.
I personally don't put a lot of stock into that kind of unit-assisted healing in Age of Sigmar.
Okay.
Because I often feel like it's just delaying the inevitable.
Okay.
And I'd rather have those units that are healing that guy doing something else.
I would only counterpoint that with that. I think that there are tools in this book that let you play that type of game.
I also think, now that I just said that wanting to be close in shooting range with your boats anyway.
Right.
And so these guys are doing something else, which is also shooting the enemy in the face.
Right. And if they're embarked, they're also fighting. Like, you know, so I mean, and he has a great melee profile.
Yes.
For a support character.
3 attacks, 3s and 2s, 2 rend, D3 damage.
Yep. I mean, 2 rend is 2 to wound is really good.
Yes, it is. The Navigator has not changed a lot. He's still...
No, he's changed a lot.
Oh, no, sorry. His stats have not changed
his stats are pretty much the same.
He's terrible in melee and ranged. You don't use him for that.
No.
But what he does now is he can still dispel 1 endless spell.
Yep.
And unbind 1 endless spell.
Yep.
In the hero phase, you can say that 1 friendly unit with this ability will read the winds, roll 6 dice, and then pick one of the following. So for each roll of 1, pick 1 different enemy unit. So you can't stack this.
Right.
Within 30 inches of this unit, invisible to this unit. That enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds.
Yep.
Roll separately. In addition, any mortal wounds are allocated and not negated, so if it goes through the ward, have that unit's move characteristics.
So good.
Yeah. 30-inch range is enough to neuter the charge ability or the movement ability of a lot of things.
And this is a reason why the one command trait that lets you re-roll this roll can be potentially really strong.
And then on the other side, for each roll of a 6, pick a friendly sky visible, same thing, 30 inches. The sky vessel can make a normal movement of D3 plus 3.
Yeah.
So it's great because you get to roll and you see how many 1s or 6s and then pick which one you want.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah. I think the Navigator, and what's important about the Navigator is you don't get to roll that 6 dice roll per Navigator. It's if you have a Navigator, you get to make this roll. Which is
1 friendly unit with this ability will read the winds.
Because there was a cute trick you could do in the previous book where if you took several Navigators, you put half and half and half and a flying unit's movement.
Yes, I remember that one.
Yeah.
Speaking of rules lawyering and stupid interactions, we'll talk about the code right. This is a brand new guy. This is our friend right here. He's the literal rules lawyer. I kind of want to paint him like to have all the books be Battletomes.
That'd be cute.
Yeah. Either that or they all like just say like filthy like porno names or something like that.
Man, that would well, if you're playing Mornar, they are like just like degenerates.
Yeah, so the lusty Arcanaut maid or something like that on the back. Cold Hunter and its art.
But this is Warscroll. He's got a Warscroll.
He's got an Ethershot pistol, 2 attacks, 3s and 3s, 1 1 damage. That's terrible. His Battletome that you bonky people with a book turns out to be bad. Not good.
It's D3 damage, which is funny.
It's a wizard staff.
Yeah.
It's just a renamed wizard staff.
Right.
Advisory roll. At the start of your hero phase, if this unit's within 6 inches of another friendly Kharadron hero, 2 dice on a 4-up, get a command point.
That's really good.
Statistically, you will get another command point every hero phase.
Yep.
He's like the advisor for Cities of Sigmar, except flat better because it's a 4 instead of a 5.
Right.
I think you'll find you can carry out the following heroic action with this unit instead of any other heroic action you can carry out with it. Roll a dice. On 1, nothing. On 2 or 3, you can pick a new footnote to apply to your army until the end of your battle.
Right.
On a 4-up, you can take a new footnote or a new amendment.
Right.
You cannot pick a footnote or amendment previously picked for your army. The new footnote or amendment replaces your current one.
Which is important, especially for footnotes, because footnotes are all once per battle.
Yes.
Amendments are things that go through that you can use usually once per turn.
Yes.
So if you're replacing an amendment, you have to make sure that you're really done with that one amendment that you were using and that you really want this next amendment, whatever it happens to be.
But for footnotes, you can use it.
You functionally use all 3 of the footnotes. And that's,
And the hard part about the footnotes was picking the one that was least situational.
Right.
This changes that.
And the thing to keep in mind, too, with him is it is a heroic action.
Yes.
So that does take up a space every turn where you get to do something with a hero.
But he's very possibly already giving you another command point.
That's true.
4-up.
Which really, and like once again, we're in the season of Galatian Champions. If you're going second, he can do the code replacement, and he can farm for another command point. So like you could get a lot of command points out of this guy potentially.
Yeah, which as you said, this book is command point hungry, so that matters a lot.
Yes.
He's good. He's not auto take.
No, absolutely
but he's good.
Not. Yeah. At 90 points, I believe he's pretty value priced.
He is cheap, but he will do nothing in combat for you.
No, he is not helpful there.
No. Who is good in combat is just the normal Endrin Master.
Who is also 90 points.
Yeah. 3-up save, 6 wounds.
That's right. He improved from a 4-up to a 3-up.
Yes, which is good. 3 attacks, 3s and 3s, 1 rend, 3 damage.
3 damage.
But 1 rend.
So, like, he's not an amazing combat hero, but he does, like, he's going to be on a boat most of the time, which is where you're generally going to want him as on a boat.
And because he heals 3 wounds, hero face.
Yep. And he can rig the boat. Instead of healing, he can rig the boat to operate at top tier.
Yes.
Which doesn't affect any of the weapons on the boats except for like the bombing runs and movement and stuff, or the ramming dice for a frigate. But that does, like, you could use it to get out of trouble pretty easily. I think that he for his 90 points, he does a lot.
Both of the Engine Masters are much more specific than they were last book.
And he's a good candidate for giving him Finest Hour, because now his 3 up 2 wound goes to a 2 up 2 wound on his hammer. And that's pretty, like, 3 up 2 up is pretty reliable.
Yeah.
Like, he's not gonna, like, smite down an entire unit or something, but 3 damage flat is very respectable.
If you get all 3 attacks, that's 9 damage. That hurts a lot.
That, it's something that your opponent will have to respect.
Somebody that is almost auto-include, though, is the other chemist.
You're never going to not want this guy.
Yeah, because in addition to all the other stuff he does, his atmospheric atomizer is decent now. It's 3d6 attacks, 4s and 4s, but it's neg 2 rend.
Yes, which it was previously.
Yeah.
Neg 2 rend and only 1 damage. But once again, he's a great candidate for Finest Hour, because then that turns to a 3+ to wound, and then you put a all-out attack on him if you have that free. And now it's 3s and 3s with 2d6 shots at -2. Really good for getting through, like, tough armored stuff.
Yes. And of course, the thing he actually does is he picks a non-embarked. He can't be embarked, and the unit can't be embarked.
Correct.
Skyfarer's unit, and gives him +1 rend.
So good.
Yeah, so that punches you up.
And there was a recent errata that you can't stack.
You can't stack it.
Yeah.
You dingleberries. Bjorgen Thundrick and his Profiteers, we can just kind of skip.
Kind of. I think they're cute.
They're cute.
I would put them in a gun hauler with the collapsible compartments.
That's fair. Thundrick can command his guys without spending a point.
Yep.
He gets a 5-up mortal breath attack.
Yeah. Which he can use while embarked, which is important.
This is true.
So, like, there's not much to say about it. Like,
the big thing about them is they've all got 4-up saves,
and they're 4-up saves and 2 wounds.
Yeah, which is you do have 1, 2, 3, 4 guys and him. So
and then the Endrin guy gets an extra wound on top of that.
So that's 9 wounds.
Yeah, for 160 points.
Yeah,
with the character and that unit. So
not bad.
Not bad. They are Barak Nar.
Yes.
So that doesn't mean you can't take them anywhere else, but they don't, like,
benefit.
Yeah.
Your good old Arcanaut company.
Yeah. So this is a unit that I hoped had gotten a little bit more of a glow up than it did.
Yeah, you're still only taking them because you have to.
Right. Like, their pistols and stuff are fine. They're still 4s and 4s, which kind of is disappointing.
4s and 4s, no rend, 9-inch, but 2 attacks.
Yeah, which I had before. But it's still, like, 4s and 4s is still a very unimpressive profile.
Yes.
All of the I guess the thing that's biggest is that all of the volley cannons went to 2d6 shots.
Yes.
And 4s to hit rather than 5s to hit.
Yes.
So that's certainly it's a much better weapon than it was before.
Yep.
Skyhook went to 3 flat damage versus monsters.
Yes. Which is very good.
Yep. And the 2 pistols that the company captain can have are differentiated slightly. It doesn't really matter which one you pick.
The other big one thing about this is that they no longer they used to get a +1 to hit if they were on an objective.
Correct.
Now they get a +1 to hit if they're shooting somebody on an objective.
Which I think is way more characterful.
Yes. It's trying to take objectives with them, not defend.
Right. And it's more like you're more likely to actually benefit from it.
Yes.
So, because camping them on an objective and then shooting out of it with their short range was kind of...
You're going to take them because they're fine.
Right.
We're actually going to skip to the Thunderers next because we're going to do the boats last.
Okay.
The Thunderers have grown up a little bit in that they got a 3-up save now, base.
Big deal.
Still 2 wounds. Their Ethershot rifle has stayed the same.
Yep.
2 attacks, 3s and 4s to hit.
I really wish it was 3s to wound.
Yeah, it really... Yeah, 4s to wound. Sorry, 3s to hit. Yeah, it's a gun. It's a freaking gun. Yeah. It shouldn't
At least it has a rend.
It does have 1 rend.
Yeah.
But it's a gun.
Right. No, I agree. It's not the change. I would have put money on that was going to go to 3 to wound, and it didn't.
Yeah. Ranged elites, which is what they are, kind of, are usually 3s, 3s, 1 rend, 1 damage.
Right.
These are 3s, 4s, 1 rend, 1 damage. The Fumigator is just D6 attacks, auto hits. Yes.
Great if they are in sharpshooters versus other Galatian champions.
Yeah, that's a good point. Deck Sweeper is the same. It's just 5 flat attacks now.
5 flat. Yeah. And it what's important is that all the special weapons all went to either, well, the Fumigator went to auto hit, but they all went to 3s to hit without any, like, because before you could have 3s to hit, but there was all kinds of conditional things.
You had to have one of each a weapon.
Right.
Nowadays, they just all 3 to hit. The Ether Cannons, 3s and 2s, 2 flat 3.
Which it used to be D3 damage.
Yes.
Which is, you know.
Even the mortar now is 3s and 3s.
And it shoots a number of shots equal to the unit size of the target to a max of 5.
So it's got blast attack from 40k.
Yeah.
Kind of. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, it being 3s and 3s and being able to buff it with a chemist, it actually makes the mortar not a bad weapon.
Yes, because the chemist does apply to all of these weapons.
Right.
In addition, at the end of the combat phase, you can pick one unit if they're still within 3 inches on a 2-up D3 mortals.
Yep.
Also, they have the drill bill, which is on a 5-up enemy unit gets 1 mortal. The big thing they have is suppressing fire.
This is cool.
Each time it shoots, after all of its attacks have been resolved, if every model in this unit shot and targeted the same unit, roll 2d6. Add to the roll the number of wounds caused by those attacks and not negated. If the score exceeds that enemy unit's bravery characteristic, it's suppressed and gets -1 for hit rolls until your next hero phase.
And that the next hero phase part is super important
because it's your opponent's entire turn.
Yeah.
And it applies to shooting, to melee and ranged. It doesn't have to be a unit you're in combat with.
Nope.
You can suppress anything important.
Right. They all have to, as long as they all target the same unit, you can suppress that unit.
Even with a unit of only 5 of these guys, getting a number of wounds on there and then rolling 2d6 and adding that and rolling higher than even bravery 10, because nothing goes above bravery 10,
right,
is fairly achievable.
Yeah, it's not unlikely to happen. And the important thing is, like I said with the hero phase thing, is that if you get double turned, that persists through the opponent's
yes, it does. Yes. Like you could suppress Archeon.
Yeah.
There's no rule that says you can't do that.
Nope.
And he's just -1 to hit, and he's not pleased.
Yeah, he's just afraid of all the bullets, I guess. I don't know.
I'm Mordaka.
Yeah.
So here's the question. Like, you can replace your Ethershot rifle with it. All these replacements are can.
Yes.
Are you going to take one of each thing now that you don't have the rule that gives you +1?
I think in most cases, I'm going to say yes. Like, I feel like the deck sweeper is, because the deck sweeper gets an extra, like the rifle gets an extra 6 inches on the deck sweeper, but you're going to be playing so close anyway.
Because your Fumigator, and the Fumigator has, the auto hit, so that's not worth taking. The mortar, which used to be the thing everybody left at home, now is just 3s and 3s, so it actually wounds better. It doesn't have the rend, but
I don't think it's like, I think that they're all the special weapons are worth taking. The mortar is probably the least good, just because like against a single, it's worse than a rifle against a single model target.
It is, but
you shoot at something else.
And 3 to wound over 4 to wound is still better.
Right.
Like they still gave you a reason to take it.
Right.
I'm glad with that.
Yeah, I am too. I think that all the special weapons are good.
All right, Engine Riggers and Sky Wardens. All of their special weapons are 4s to hit now.
Yes.
The Rivet Guns are still 3s. They get 3 attacks, 3s and 4s, 2 rend, 1 damage.
2 rend, which is a big improvement.
Meaning that a rapid fire Rivet Gun is flat better than an Ethershot rifle.
Yep.
Except shorter range.
Yeah.
I don't like that. Volley Gun is 2d6 4s and 4s.
Yep.
So no longer 5s and 4s. Grapnel Launcher, Sky Hook. The Drill Launcher has 3 rend.
Yes.
They're both D3 damage still. So you're hitting on 4s, which is rough.
Yeah. With the special weapons, it's a little rough. You're basically taking those special weapons. Like the volley gun is fine because it can potentially get so many shots.
Yes.
The Skyhook is once again flat 3 damage against monsters, so situationally really great. The grapnel launcher allows a lot of shenanigans.
The grapnel launcher allows you to pick a point 15 inches away and move there.
Right. It's kind
on
of
a train feature.
It's kind of a limited teleport. Like, yeah.
And more than 9 inches away from all enemy units.
Right.
So that can be a little difficult.
Yeah, it's definitely like it's a teleport mechanic. But it allows a lot of extra mobility because it happens, because of its timing and all that. It really gets you can get a lot of extra movement. Easy to snag a poorly guarded objective, stuff like that.
Yep, but mainly you're taking them to heal your boat.
Yes, because the healing happens at the end of once per turn.
At the end of any phase.
And it's not just your turn. It happens in both the opponent's turn and your turn.
Because it's Now, you do have to roll a dice for each model in this unit, and on a 4 or 5, you get 1 heal 1.
Right.
But if you have a Endrin Master and Dirigible
you get
suit,
+1 to the roll.
you can get +1 to the roll.
And on a 6,
you heal 2.
Yep.
And it's not an unmodified 6.
Right.
So with the Endrin Master, that's a 5 or 6.
Yep.
They're there to heal your guys.
Yeah.
They're also decent in melee. 2 attacks, 3s and 3s, 2 rend.
Which is a big, because they were 1 attack in the previous book, except for the Mizzen Master.
Yes.
So,
and the Mizzen Master still gets +1 attack.
Yep.
Now, talk about a real glow up though. You have the Sky Wardens.
Finally.
Worth noting, both these balloon boys are 4-up saves.
Right. They're not 3-ups like they did not get the Thunder treatment, but I buy it because they fly.
Yeah.
Lighter frame.
Oh yeah. Vulcanizer pistol, 3 attacks, 3s and 3s.
That's
1
a
damage.
big difference because they only had 1 attack with a Vulcanizer pistol previously.
So their pistols no longer suck.
Right.
They have the same ranged weapon options with the same stats as the
Riggers.
Yep. Worth noting that there is nothing that stops you from using the grapnel launcher and then charging with these guys.
Right.
Which is nice. You do have to set up more than 9.
Right. So you're looking at a 9-inch charge, but there is the footnote for a 3d6 charge.
Yep.
So,
and they have timed charges, which is at the end of the combat phase.
This is so cool.
If you're within 3 inches of an enemy unit, you can roll a dice. On a 2-up, you pick one enemy unit within 3 inches to get D3 mortal wounds, and then you retreat.
Right.
So basically, at the end of the combat phase, not at the end of the movement phase, not your movement phase, you can retreat and also deal mortals. That's really good.
Right.
Because your retreat roll is just your movement, correct?
Yeah.
Which is, checks notes, 12 inches.
Yep.
So you can retreat 12 inches away, which is already good.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the combat phase. So, if you get the double turn, there's nothing to stop you from retreating,
right,
getting 3 mortals, and then charging
or
again.
even not, because it's the end of the combat phase. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's not the end of your combat phase, it's just the end of the
combat phase.
So you can use it in the opponent's turn as well.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really strong about, there's so many things you can do with this. First of all, being able to fall back, and if you don't get the following turn coming up, you can still rally at the start of your opponent's turn, which, combined with the article for the 4-up rally, that's where that really comes into play, is with these guys.
Yep.
Because if you're playing Barak Zon, you double reinforce them. You have a unit of 9 guys.
That's worth using a rally on.
Yeah.
You can still also retreat them or redeploy them.
Yep. Yeah. It's a really strong ability.
And their Sky Pike is not bad.
No.
3 attacks now.
Which is huge.
3s and 3s, 1 rend, flat 2 damage.
Yes.
If you are getting +1 to hit and wound, that is 3 attacks, 2s and 2s, 1 rend, 2 damage.
They hit harder than Hearthguard Berserkers.
That hurts.
And they have a 2-inch range.
Yes.
So you don't need to take them in Glacian veterans to get the full complement of their attacks.
Right. That is almost worth building a bunch of Sky Wardens that do not have the special guns.
I agree.
That is the one weird thing about them, is you're probably not going to want to use the special guns.
Probably not. You might want the grapnel launcher. You might want 1 grapnel launcher for movement.
For mobility.
Yeah.
But if you're double reinforcing these guys, you're taking 8 Sky Pikes.
Yeah.
And 1 grapnel launcher.
And because the custodian gets an extra attack, so he's swinging out 4 attacks. Like, that's as good as a character.
That hurts.
Right.
1 rend is a little low.
Yeah.
But this is Age of Sigmar.
Well, and that's where the chemist can come in with the purple sun.
Yeah. These guys are, by the way, 130 points.
That's a very good value.
Remember where they used to be less than Endrinriggers?
Yeah.
Now they're 10 points more.
And for good reason.
Let's go ahead and do the boats.
Yeah.
Let's do the gun hauler first.
Sure.
Because the gun hauler has actually changed the most.
No. The frigate
has. You're right. The frigate has.
Yeah.
The gun hauler's 10 wounds now.
Yep.
It's also a 3-up save.
Big.
Remember when gun haulers were 5-up saves?
I do. Yep.
We have increased the save of a gun hauler every book we've released.
The Dwarven steel gets stronger and stronger.
Next book, 2-up save. Let's go.
I'm all about it.
It is made of metal. You're still got 2 carbines, which are 3s and 3s, neg 1, 2 damage.
And which is important because in the previous book, there were only 1 damage for the carbines on the gun hauler.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that. This is the one where the cannon's gotten worse.
Yes.
Because it's 2 attacks, hits on 4s, 2s to wound, 2.
So yeah, the solid shell for the cannon is markedly worse than the previous one. However, the shrapnel shell is better just by virtue of you don't have to roll for random number of attacks.
So instead of D6 attacks, it's 4, which is higher than you were probably going to roll.
Right.
3s and 3s, neg 1 damage, 2 damage. Or neg 1 around 2 damage.
You're right.
So the fact that it hits better than the cannon is so weird. The shell is so weird.
It's a scatter shot.
I guess. It's still so weird to me. You're probably going to take these for the same reason. They've got bomb racks now. Which did they have bomb racks before?
They did not.
They did not.
Well, they had the previous bomb rule that all of the sky vessels previously had. So all the sky vessels now have bombs. They work differently than they did previously.
Yep. They still have the 6-up ward if they're nearby a other sky vessel.
Right. They give a 6-up ward.
Yeah, sorry, 6-up ward, and they still got the head full, so add 6 inch movement.
Which is really big with how the bomb racks work. So probably worth talking about the bomb racks. So how the bomb racks work now is if you pass over an enemy unit, you get to roll dice equal to their bomb rack's ability, which in this case for the gun hauler is 4.
Yep.
And on a result of a 4-up, it does 1 mortal wound.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can do that against characters.
Doesn't work on flying units.
Does not work on flying units. But
you can't fly higher than them and drop a bomb.
Apparently not.
If you ever try to hit a bird with a dropped bomb, it's real hard.
Fair enough. But so like I guess Night Haunt aren't afraid of bombs at all.
Yeah, this does absolutely suck against Night Haunt.
Right. But in most cases, what's really cool is like because of if you have 18 inches, that gives you 18 inches of movement with the head full.
Mm-hmm.
If you take the amendment, the article for +2 movement, now they're moving 20 inches. And they can pick something in between in that flight path.
And you can also, if you put the compartments on it, you now have a 20-inch movement transport.
Right. And which, as we talked about before, can be 6 Sky Wardens.
6 Sky Wardens who then get out and charge something.
Yep.
Because you only
they can't get out. But
you're right. No,
but if they can't, but they could, but then they couldn't charge. But they can. The boat itself can charge, and they still all get to attack.
Mm-hmm.
So
because they're embarked,
right,
and they're going to hit like a truck,
right.
So this is a turn 1 alpha strike melee unit.
You can definitely use it to scalpel out something.
Kharadron Overlords now has a turn 1 alpha strike melee unit
because they get the 20-inch move plus the guys inside still get to shoot.
Mm-hmm. Because that's not a run; that's just a 20-inch move, baby.
Right, and so I mean, it's really cool.
Yeah, that lets you get somewhere.
Right,
which is what they were always for.
Right.
And with a 3-up save, you now have a better chance of surviving that somewhere.
I mean, that's not nothing.
3-up save, 10 wounds is hard for some things to crack.
It takes a dedicated thing.
That is no longer incidental.
Right.
Incidental damage is no longer going to kill one piece.
Right.
We're gonna save the frigate. Now we're gonna go to the frigate. We'll save the ironclad for last. We won't blue
smallest to
longer.
biggest.
Sorry, yeah. Frigate, 15 wounds, 3-up save.
Yep.
12-up move. 12 move.
Yep.
It's got the carbines, 4 of them, 3s and 3s, -1. It's got the heavy cannon shrapnel, which is just 5 attacks,
which is so good.
3s and 3s, -1, 2 damage. The shell is 4s and 2s, -2, D3 plus 2 damage.
Yep.
The gun hauler one is only D3 plus 1, by the way.
Right.
So it's slightly bigger shell.
Right.
It's also got the heavy sky hook, which is 2 attacks now, 4s and 3s, -2, D6.
D6, but flat 6 against monsters.
Yes. Very good.
With 2 shots. Which is,
yes. Spiking 12 on a monster is brutal.
Yeah.
It's also got 8 bomb rack rolls.
Right.
So the big thing about this is that you can carry 12 Skyfarer models, which can be 2 units of 6 Wardens.
Right.
A unit of 10 Arcanauts and 2 heroes.
Right.
A unit of 10 Thunderers and 2 heroes.
Yeah, it's it also gets ramming dice as well, so it gets impact attacks when it charges.
Yep. But the big one is Assault Boat.
Yes.
After this unit finishes a charge move, you can pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of this unit and roll a number of dice equal to the ramming dice, which you mentioned. It's the 4-up mortals, so it's chariot charge.
Yep.
Then you can pick any friendly units, plural,
units
embarked in this unit to disembark. Units that disembark in this way must be set up within 3 inches of an enemy unit and count as having made a charge, and they get strike first.
Yes. Wow.
Oh my gosh.
That's so good.
You give this thing the 2-inch movement. So you're moving 14.
Yep.
You're shooting with everything it's got and everything that your balloon boys on there have got.
Right.
Their pistols, which are 12-inch unit and good. Then you charge with this thing. Maybe you charge with a 3d6 if you just really want to roll a bunch of mortals.
Well, the 3d6 doesn't matter so much because it's not equal to the charge roll.
Oh, no, you're right. Sorry. That's the other thing. But you still 3d6 if you really want to get there.
Yeah.
You do some mortals because you've got the giant ramming spear.
Yep.
And then everyone disembarks and has strike first.
So good.
And beats the utter crap. And now, everybody who's on a boat already counts as having made a charge. So why do you want to disembark?
Well, there's capture objectives.
That's the big one.
Yes.
You can dump those 12 balloon boys onto an objective.
Right.
And you're counting as 17 on that objective now
Right.
because you count as 5.
That's right. The big boats all count as 5 on objectives now, which is a huge change from the previous iteration.
I am a Kharadron player, and I am meleeing you with a 17 objective boat.
Right. Well, and with a unit like especially if you're playing Barrack Zon that hits like a truck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh. And then the frigate itself hits like a truck.
Right.
The heavy skyhook is also not a bad thing because, again, flat 6 against monsters. Also, if you hit somebody,
don't even have to wound them.
Score a hit on a monster, on a 4-up, that monster can't rampage.
Which, against some factions, is absolutely massive.
Even against everybody, because now you can charge with your Skyfarers, and maybe you snagged a monster who is no longer going to roar you.
Right. Yeah.
Or D3 stomp you and kill 2 of those Skyfarers before they get to fight.
Right.
That's huge.
Especially good against monsters that have special
Sons of Behemoth hate this one weird trick.
Right. Or even like, I'm thinking of Nurgle, who have the Mountain of Loathsome Flesh, where they just do like a flat 5 mortal wounds on that rampage. Or, I mean, there's just, or, there's just so many.
There's so many things that frustrates.
It's very much making me go back and wanting to put skyhooks on my frigates.
Yeah, because that's real fun.
Yeah.
It is very much anti-monster tech. So against something that's not going to be great.
Sure.
Because
and it does have a worse rend than the cannon does, and it doesn't have access to the shrapnel, which the shrapnel on the frigate is excellent because it gets a set 5 shots.
Set 5 shots, 3s and 3s, neg 1, 2 damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's real good, man.
Mm-hmm.
Frigate is my vote for... We'll talk about this at the end, actually.
Sure.
I won't. Oh, sorry. So then we get to the Ironclad, which has gotten 2 more wounds.
Yep.
So it's up to 20 now.
Yeah.
On a 3-up save. 20 wounds on a 3-up save is massive.
Pretty good.
Is scary, terrifying.
Yeah, it's. I mean, especially if you can give it like going into all out defense, or if you take a tome and you can put Mystic Shield on it, like it becomes very hard to deal with. Yeah.
It's got 8 carbines, same stats. Aethershock torpedoes are 4 attacks, 4s and 3s, neg 1, d3 damage.
Right.
The shrapnel cannon gets 6 attacks now.
Mm-hmm. Well, it had 6 with the shrapnel before.
Yeah. Oh, actually, yeah. That was the one that had 6 before. That was the one that was not.
That was the only one that was set. It's actually, this is like the least improved of the cannons.
But to be fair, the Ironclad was the one that was already good.
Yeah, I agree.
The Skyhook is the same. 4s and 2s, 2 range.
Yeah,
D6.
it is 1 better to wound than the frigate Skyhook. But yeah, it's
the volley cannon is unchanged.
Yep.
The volley cannon is slightly worse now because
it's 12-inch rather than 18.
Nope, 18 inches.
Is it 18? Okay.
It is 18. They've not changed it, thankfully.
Nice. Yeah.
It is slightly less good just by virtue of it can't get that +1 juicy +1 attack.
That's true.
It can.
It just doesn't really benefit from it, like comparatively speaking.
I've not run the actual crunch, but I am fairly certain that the volley cannon no longer maths higher than the other options.
I agree.
It very much used to. It used to be like, statistically, the volley cannon's going to do more.
Right.
I will say the volley cannon is still great into things like Seraphon.
Right.
Or any -1 damage. In general, this book still hates -1 damage effects.
Yeah, and that's getting relatively rare.
It is.
Yeah.
We'll see if Seraphon keep it.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see if the Coalesced keep that. If they do, that's a pretty big reason to still bring the volley cannon.
Right.
God, fighting that thing sucks as Kharadron.
Right.
Boarding weapons, you've got 8 of them. You have 10 bomb rack rolls.
Yes, that's potentially super scary.
That's potentially brutal. It used to be that you got a bonus to your roll for bomb racks.
Yeah, it had a better chart because
right.
it started at 2-up and it went to a 5-up.
Now you have all 4-up. You just get more dice.
Yeah.
Bulwarks of Iron, same thing. It counts as 5. Great Skyhook's the same. This holds 22.
Yep. And what's important, the big difference between this book and the previous book too, is that Sky Vessels all had a disadvantage if you took more than
there was that thing you could have too heavy. That's no longer a thing.
Yeah.
You can't weigh yourself down. It's a binary.
Right.
You either have them or you don't. And then there's the Supremacy Mine.
It's really cool.
Once per battle, at the end of the enemy charge phase, you can say this unit will drop its Supremacy Mine. If you do so, pick one enemy unit within 3 inches and roll a dice. On a 2-up, that enemy suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the roll.
It's a neat little, it's
there is a potential to ruin a Galatian veteran's day.
Well, yeah, if like a hero charges in, I'm thinking once again, talking about Daughters of Cain, like a High Gladiatrix charges in to give the support to the rest of everything else charging in, you can just drop a bomb on her.
And she explodes.
Yep.
There's a red mist, and the rest of the elves are upset.
Right. or it's really good for like if a monster that's weakened charges in, it's a really good way to like maybe potentially like bracket a monster and before it gets to fight. I mean, it's a cool little once per game.
Yep, it's on a D6, so it's it's gonna spike or not spike.
Right.
Yeah, the Ironclad is so weird to talk about the Ironclad because this used to be the thing, but the Frigate has blown up so much.
I think you could justify not playing with an Ironclad now.
Yeah, because the damage is still pretty proportional for their points.
I agree. That it's also important. The Ironclad is 500 points.
Yeah, and the Frigate is how many?
300.
Oh, for 200 points, man.
Yeah.
It's real hard not to bring just like because that's
2 frigates instead of
2 frigates and 100 points.
Yeah.
I'd rather have 2 frigates.
I mean, and part of it is like, what do you want to build into? Like,
yes.
I think like a Barrack Zon is going to take frigates.
Yes.
And whereas I see, like there's because of the better durability of the Ironclad, like Mornar just still doesn't mind taking Ironclad.
It is still 5 more wounds.
Yeah.
Which is not nothing at 3-up save.
Right.
And it's 10 bombs versus 8. It's 8 boarding weapons, 6 guaranteed attacks on the shell.
And the 10, like, don't discount the 10 bomb racks either.
No,
like,
that's 2 extra shots of another mortal.
Right.
That's really good. And the Supremacy Mine is nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
And the extra capacity allows you to do things like fit in a double reinforced Thunderer unit.
Mm-hmm.
Really
or
make that...
2 units of 10 Thunderers.
Right. And like, 2 characters.
And and that's, and if this is very much a Death Star.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a universe in which you take 2 Ironclads anymore.
Oh, no, I don't think so either. No.
When they were 480, that was a thing you could do.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a universe in which you take 2 Ironclads.
I don't think so either.
But it would be funny.
I mean, some people still take Nagash, and that's basically the same thing. So
yeah, the difference is that Nagash's machine gun is mortal wounds.
That's true. But actually, Nagash is probably worse than 2 Ironclads. So
yeah, he probably is. But that's because he hasn't gotten.
Poor Nagash.
Nagash has the problem of
you know what? Nagash deserves it. Never mind. I take that back.
I mean, no, he's earned it. Like, yeah. Poor Nagash is not a phrase I'm ever going to actually say. But that's what happens when you have a multi-book god.
Right.
There's a reason they've stopped doing that.
Mm-hmm. Like, they basically have, like, I don't know, is Kragnos? Kragnos is not in the Gloomspite book, if I don't.
No.
Like, he's a part of the part in the rear, like, where you can take him.
Yes.
But he's a War Master.
Yeah.
But, like, he only appears in the Auric War Clans book.
Yes.
And, yeah. So, hopefully, when Death starts getting their...
They just need to have Nagash be, in...
Like a download on the Warcom website or something.
He goes, oh, crap, Archaon got, freaking obliterated, or sorry, Arkan got obliterated. I better go take over OBR, and he's just an OBR.
Sure, and that would be great. And to be fair to like, not to diverge too much, but his aesthetic fits OBR.
Yes,
really well,
it's also his pet thing.
Yeah,
Nagash's Allander's thing.
Yeah,
the vampires are revolting.
Yeah.
The Flesh Eater Courts don't give a crap.
No.
So Nagash needs to just go hang out with the guys he built.
Right.
That's what he always wanted.
Yeah, that's his ideal.
You wanted these things you built that you have complete control over. So go pout with them.
Right.
This
continuing on with the
this
things
is what
that matter.
This has been Dwarfs Hate Nagash talk. So that's it for the Warscrolls. What is your most grown-up War Scroll?
Oh, it's a frigate by far. Like,
it's real close between the Skywardens because the frigate was at least usable. Mm-hmm. It was proportionate damage.
That's a fair point.
Like, you could either go the Ironclad. What happened is the Ironclad kept getting cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
So it got a little better, proportionately better.
Right.
And it's always the problem of, not the problem, but the factor of bigger units, you put more buffs onto one unit, it's more efficient.
Yeah.
But the frigate was at least usable. It's something you fit in if you didn't have enough
points. And it was like, it still had a cannon, and the cannon was like, it was swingy, but at least, D6 damage sometimes does a lot of damage.
Whereas the Skywardens have gone from being the worst unit in the book to my favorite unit in the book.
I can't really disagree with that. Like, they did get a massive glow up. Like, going to 3 attacks apiece and 3s to hit, so big.
Skywardens are amazing before you put them in Zon.
I mean, yeah.
And then you put them in Zon.
Even if you play them in Barak Nar and you pair them with Brock, like, they're rolling a ton of dice.
That's the other thing, is they're good in 2. Like, Zon is that 2s and 2s, which is good. But Brock is
+1 attack.
4 attacks on all of your
guys. And then you can still throw all-out attack on them.
So a double reinforced unit who is going to get within 2 inches, because even the back row has 2 inches attacks. So a double reinforced unit.
Well, you can't double reinforce in Nar.
No, you can't. That's a good point. So a single reinforced unit of 6 guys has, let me see, 4 attacks each. That's 24 attacks, 25 because of the bonus. 25 attacks. You know, let's say you put out all attack on them.
Yeah.
2s and 3s, neg 1, 2 damage.
Yeah.
That murders most things.
I mean, that's good dice on almost everything. Like, you know, even stuff that's notoriously difficult to damage, like Archaon, Gotrek, and, you know.
And the nice thing about Brock is that it's not, he doesn't pick a Skywarden's unit. It's everybody who charged.
Everybody will wholly within 12.
And
it's wholly within 12 at the time they make their attacks, because it's while they're within. So they can pile into the 12 inches as well to get the bonus.
And a frigate holds how many folks?
12. 12, yeah.
So, okay. So you can't hold 2 units of Balloon Boys and good old...
And Brock. You'd have to coordinate a charge between, like, a couple, either 2 frigates or...
You know what? So you've got 2 frigates. One of them has 2 units of Skywardens on it. One of them has a unit of Skywardens, Brock, and you know what? Let's just say another unit of Skywardens, because why the hell not at this point?
Well, I mean, if we want to get really ridiculous, like, Brock can be in an Ironclad who has the ram on him when you do the 3d6 charge.
Yeah.
And...
Yeah, and you know, it's a clown car. A million drawers appear, and Gotrek dies.
So they really don't like him.
No,
actually, fluff wise, they just find Gotrek really annoying.
Yeah, it's like Honor the Ancestors, not that one.
So there are some cool tech that you to overall with the book though. There's some cool tech pieces you can do at the current season because there's a command ability.
Let's talk some tech now, like some tech pieces. We've gone over the Warscrolls. So what is some of your favorite techs?
So once again, let's go back to Skywardens and say you're playing Barakzon and you have a double reinforced unit in a frigate.
Mm-hmm.
They can receive the order from the current season to get +1 attack if that unit gets charged.
Yeah, I forgot about that. The hold in place thing.
Yeah.
Pikes out, boys.
Yep. And so now, because range isn't you don't care about range because everyone measures from the base of the boat when they're in the boat. So they all get +1 attack if they're charged. And you can do that on top of an Unleash Hell. So like that is talk about a charge deterrent. And
yeah.
And the cool thing about Unleash Hell with Kharadron Overlords specifically is because of how how Unleash Hell is worded. It's way easier to get entire units within Unleash Hell range.
Yes.
To deter charges.
Because they're on that boat.
Right.
Which means, because you don't even have to pick someone who is within 6 inches of the charge unit.
And only the models within 6 can shoot. Right. But every model you measure from the base of the boat. So therefore, they all get to shoot. If you're there, if any of them are within Unleash Hell range, they're all within Unleash Hell range.
Gross.
Yeah.
The hard part there is picking which unit you want to Unleash Hell with.
And there's some really cool things too with the Admiral. If you being able to issue a free order to his flagship, and if he has the leadership of the Alpha, which allows you to issue 3 orders. The first order you issue to his flagship is free, and then you get to issue the other 2 orders for free as well on the leadership of the Alpha turn, as long as they're all the same order.
Yeah.
And
all out attack or Unleash Hell, Unleash Hell, Unleash Hell.
Well, I don't think it's all.
You can't do all Unleash Hell.
You can't do Unleash Hell, but you can do all out attack, all out defense, and rally. And which it only really matters for all out defense. And really, you're doing it for all out attack.
Yes.
So you get free to all out attack, and then unless they fact it in the future, this is how this works: is you get to do then the second and third uses of all out attack are free.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's your general, it's an 18-inch range from him, and so you can give you can still do a huge push forward and give 3 units all out attack for no command points.
Yeah. Which is real good.
Yep.
And because of the hitting on force thing, you are going to want all out attack.
Yes. The cannons are pretty unreliable, especially if you're ever firing into a -1 situation. Yeah.
You talked about this army really eats command points.
Yeah.
A lot of them are going to go to all out attack.
Yes, you're going to be using all out attack probably in every single phase that you can. Because just for the reason that there's so many 4s to hit on the big weapons.
Yeah. Your Thunderers are your most reliable because they're hitting on 3s.
Right.
Almost everybody else is hitting on 4s. That matters.
Right.
Except for the 2-ups or 3-ups to hit for your Sky Pikes.
Right.
Which is huge.
I think that, Sky Wardens are definitely a big winner. I think that, and the only reason why I picked the Frigate is because the Frigate went from not having a really clearly defined role in the army to having a very it does a thing and it does it really well.
The Skywardens are the ugly duckling who grew up to be the beautiful swan.
Absolutely.
The Frigate is the boring duck who grew up to be a beautiful swan.
Right.
They're both beautiful swans, though.
Oh, and like I have a hard time. I can't really pick out a loser war scroll in this book. Arcanaut Company is probably, and
my loser war scroll is trying to find which one it was.
probably Code Right.
The Code Right's my loser war scroll.
And it's not bad. Like,
no, it's just maybe the Engine Master on foot, but even then, he still has a place just sitting on your boat healing it.
and he's 90 points.
Right.
Yeah.
I still have trouble picking the Arcanaut Company as my loser war scroll because they are still going to be your bread and butter objective takers.
That's true. I mean, unless you are purposely building into to avoid taking them.
Yes.
Which you can do in some Skyports and some command trait,
because they're still 100 points, right?
Yeah, they're 100 points, and like for 100 points, it's not actually a bad package.
No,
it's just kind of lukewarm.
4 up save, 2 attack range attacks at 9 inches is good for 100 points.
Yeah, I agree.
They're still good in Tempest's Eye.
Yeah. And actually, there is I'm considering my Fire Slayers army. How can I ally these guys in to get a good amount of use out of them?
Speaking of which, if all the bullets have this rule, if this unit is part of an army that is not a Kharadron Overlords army, it can still use the Skyfleet's battle trait.
Yes.
So you can still do the transport thing.
Yes.
And what else does Skyfleet's battle trait have?
That's all it does.
That's all it has? Okay.
Yeah.
So taking these guys as allies or coalition is better than it was.
Well, it
hasn't gotten worse.
It makes it functional.
Yes.
Because before they used the garrison rules, which were part of the core rules.
Yes.
And so now that they have the Skyfleet's one is the one that enables transport.
Yes.
So if you took them as allies, you wouldn't normally be able to use a transport ability. So this is what enables that.
But man, Skywardens hanging out in cities, Tempest Eye, with that plus bonus to movement on turn 1. They hit hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I am so excited to play this book.
Yeah, it's very telling that the only downside is that my Arcanauts are a little of a letdown because they're a little boring.
I just expected them to be more. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, I could have gone with them going to 120 points and getting 3 ups to 1 on their pistols.
Yeah. Then again, with how starred we are for points in this book, I'm okay with them not going.
Sure, I can agree with that.
I'm very pleased with the Skyports.
Yes.
Being
oh my goodness.
The simplification of this book is amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing how they simplified the hell out of this book and yet gave it far more synergies and
there's
pairs.
way more diversity in how you can build a list for this army now.
Complicated is not always better, Games Workshop.
And they're starting to learn that with Age of Sigmar for sure.
Yep.
Because all the 3rd edition books that have come out have pretty much like eliminated the complications of the subfactions, and this is certainly a good example of that.
So in general, I'm very pleased with this. I am looking forward.
And talking about it more, I don't miss Aethergold.
No, I don't miss it all. Good riddance. I'm not gonna say good riddance. I'm glad that they're no longer doing
with what they did in this book. It doesn't need to exist.
Yeah, I'm glad they're no longer tying it to other mechanics that already exist.
Right.
The last thing I want to talk about is the Vanguard that we have.
Okay.
Here.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah, it's a good box.
You need everything in here. Everything in here is good.
Yep.
That Admiral is a amazing choice. The Frigate is a good boat.
And you get some balloon boys.
I am pleased that this is a Vanguard that did not ditch the big boat.
Yeah.
I was worried about that.
Yeah.
This is actually, I'm going to say, one of the few Start Collecting / Vanguard boxes that is better than the previous iteration.
I agree. Because you only got 5 Thunderers, a Engine Master on foot, and a Gun Hauler before.
Which was not bad, but you never needed more than 1 Engine Master.
Right.
So yeah,
this is a good box.
Yep, great box. Again, if you need everything in here, it's a good deal. If you don't need one thing, it kind of drops rapidly in price.
Right, because I don't know if the Frigate is going to be available in a separate box or not.
I'm assuming it will be because it always was.
Yeah.
If they stop doing that, that will be bad.
Right.
Please don't do that, GW. The Code Right, I'm a little disappointed by.
He's an awesome model. The concept is amazing. I feel like in an army that's both starved for points and has a lot of there's a lot of call for their characters.
You don't have room for a hero who's only okay.
Yeah. And extra command points are good, but there's so many ways to get free commands that you can kind of get around not needing those extra command points. I don't know. I'm gonna play with him and figure out maybe there's a place where he really fits in really well. Being able to, and there might be more play with being able to cycle through your articles and footnotes, not your amendments and footnotes. I'm not sure what that might be, and there might be a Skyport where that works really well. But right now, I'm not super impressed with his War Scroll. Awesome model, kind of mediocre War Scroll.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of been something they've been doing a lot with these recent Foot Heroes, is that they've been amazing models with bad scrolls or mediocre scrolls. Which I guess I will prefer over them being the new hotness you have to have.
Right.
Because that happens sometimes.
And that they've done that before with, especially the dual box sets.
Yeah, the dual box sets are a different story.
Right.
But yeah, overall, my arbitrary numerical rating, I'm giving it a 9.9 out of 10.
I can't disagree with that. I mean, I'm going to give it a 10 just because I'm a super fan. So
yeah.
Yep.
This makes me want to actually go paint my dwarves because it's an elite army I can do.
I'm going to paint up Aelsing for my Drekkie. And
it does mean I have to pick a scheme.
Yeah, you got to do that now. I know you've been waffling.
And I don't like any of the default schemes. I don't love any of them. Is the problem. And like Mornar, I don't love Mornar at all.
Mornar's kind of a weird scheme, actually.
It is. I don't like any of them. I don't like how they color the schemes. I need to figure that out.
Well, you can paint your toys however you want.
Exactly, and I will. I think that's all that released this week, right? There's nothing else that released this week?
Oh, nothing that I care about for sure.
I mean, there's elves.
Also elves.
They're the most generic elves in the history of generic elves.
They're Daughters of Cain with masks and other whips and stuff. Yay. I'm sure there's someone out there that's really excited about that. Sorry, Cheryl.
But this is what we're excited for. That's
what matters here. This is what matters.
Well, if you're still listening at the end of this, thank you for staying this long. Go ahead, like us, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you for joining me, Kevin, for this immense deep dive on one of my favorite books and factions.
And my absolute favorite.
I am so looking forward to playing this. Can't wait for all the hot Kharadron and Kharadron action we're going to have in the next few weeks. Until then, until our next book review, for which Kevin may or may not be joining, until the next Fire Slayer's Tome comes out, we'll see you next time on Miniatures Rundown.